throne of the North. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Standing on the highest mountain in Lyon County. In Thundercloud County, Earl Weiss's castle was built on the highest mountain in this county. When the army of 10,000 arrived, Earl Weiss could not resist even if he wanted to. Why were there only 10,000 soldiers left? Of course, it was because it was spring plowing time, and the extra soldiers went back to their homes to farm. Among the 10,000 people, there were more than 2,000 soldiers from Lingdu County. The Dragon Knights and the Dragon Blood Warriors, plus Ryan's hundreds of knight attendants, were the army that climbed Thundercloud Mountain out of the 10,000 people. The imagined resistance did not appear. Earl Weiss accepted his failure and waited for the nobles to arrive on this mountain. Also waiting were the nobles of Thundercloud County. They looked very ugly, but they had to come, because only by making things clear here would they not be guilty of colluding with the church. The ugly faces were of course because they would pay a lot of benefits. The war was lost, and the lady and the soldiers were lost. Of course, it was impossible to smile. Ryan felt that these nobles hated Earl Weiss at this moment. Count Love Weiss, as a noble of the Empire, you are secretly colluding with the church. What else do you have to say? Count Winter asked the question as soon as they met. He was the governor of the Northwind province, and he was the only one who could question a count. Count Weiss sneered at the nobles who appeared. Which noble law of the Empire says that you can't trade with the church? Count Weiss was determined to do something, and the collusion between the nobles and the church could not be said openly. After all, this is a war between theocracy and royal power. Even the nobles of the Empire may openly oppose the faith of the church, because they are also devout believers of the Lord of Dawn. This is the change brought about by the real existence of the gods. The nobles can only oppose the church in certain matters, not in the faith itself. Naturally, the so-called collusion with the church cannot be used as a reason for conviction. Even if a war breaks out between the two sides, there must be reasons and evidence, and it cannot be directly opposed to the existence of the other side. Haha, Earl Weiss, you'd better save this for the Senate and the Imperial Court. My mission is just to send all the people in your Weiss family over there. Earl Winter smiled with some complacency. He was the winner of the war. No matter how Earl Weiss argued, it could not change the fact that the war was lost and he colluded with the church. The nobles had many ways to put all kinds of responsibilities on Earl Weiss and make him confess reasonably. Sure enough, after hearing this, Earl Weiss's face inevitably changed. According to Earl Winter, Earl Weiss was bound to have several endings, that is, some people died, especially the direct line. Under the current tense relationship between the Empire and the church, the Empire must kill the chicken to scare the monkey, and the Earl Weiss family will bleed into rivers. The rest will be exiled to those worlds without any vitality, which have been completely dead and covered with winter because of the Pan-Plane War of Gods, and live out their lives alone. Among them, Earl Weiss himself should be included. Some will survive and inherit the honor of the Weiss family, becoming wandering nobles, or continuing to inherit the title without land. But, whether it is a wandering noble or inheriting an empty title, Earl Weiss dare not guarantee that it is still his descendant. 99% of the possibility is that the person has the blood of the Weiss family, but has no relationship with the current Weiss family. Why? Because everyone is a noble, more or less, they are all relatives. For example, Earl Winter and Earl Weiss, a kid in Earl Winter's family stood up and said that his ancestor came from the Weiss family, and then after checking, it was indeed the case. So does he also contain the blood of the Weiss family? If so, does he have such a 1 in 10,000 chance of inheritance? Especially when people in the Weiss family died or disappeared, is this probability getting bigger and bigger? At that time, the kid decided to restore the glory of his ancestors, and was brave enough to take on the responsibilities and noble qualities of the nobility, and then Earl Winter appreciated this and strongly supported it, and then the kid changed his name and became the new Weiss Earl, or Viscount. The Weiss family is still there, but what does it have to do with the current Weiss family? The inheritance of bloodline. Earl Weiss will never allow the bloodline of the Weiss family to be tainted. He stood up and walked towards the study behind him. Come with me. Of course, it was not only Earl Winter who followed him in, but also Earl Solon and Baron Ryan. It was not because of the improvement of their status in this war, but because Ryan represented Lingdu County and was the spokesperson for many nobles. In the study, there were only 4 nobles and a short cat man. "Noble sir, spare me, everything is my fault. I assassinated Viscount Dragon and Viscount Dragon's eldest son, and it was also me." The cat man knelt on the ground and cried bitterly, taking all the things that Earl Weiss had done on himself, but none of the 3 nobles present would care about these. Earl Weiss didn't care either. After they listened quietly, Earl Weiss spoke. "Hector has taken some people to the west coast, where he will live as the heir of the Weiss family and will never come back." The Earl's eldest son did not appear in the subsequent war. As the blood of the Weiss family, he lived as a descendant of the loser, waiting for the distant future to find an opportunity to restore the honor of the nobles and the glory of the family. Count Weiss said it directly, because it could not be concealed. "The nobles who live in the sun are nobles, and those in the shadows are just mice. Since he wants to inherit the Weiss family, he will definitely not hide." Earl Winter just smiled and said nothing. Earl Weiss didn't care either. He knew that these nobles didn't want this. "As a reward, everything in the Earl's territory is yours, and I will share the wealth of the Weiss family with you." They would have been ours. Earl Soren's old face showed the greed of a hungry wolf. "Without me, those things will always be marked with Weiss's mark." Earl Weiss was not polite, but what he said was indeed true. The relationship between the nobility and the inheritance is doomed to be inseparable, which leads to the fact that in this world, after hundreds of years, someone will jump out to point out that the improper wealth in the hands of some nobles actually belongs to another bloodline. In short, it is not fair. Victory in war requires fruits. The entrance to the other dimensional world I control is on this mountain. I will give you the key to divinity." As he said, Count Weiss moved the huge fang from the bookcase behind him. Ryan was surprised, thinking it was a decoration just now. "In addition, I will help you identify those nobles who also participated in the transaction with the church." This sentence completely blocked the hope of the Weiss family's bloodline to return to Thundercloud County in the future, and finally made the eyes of several nobles light up. Chapter 202 Feast. Count Weiss promised a lot of things. As a loser and a noble, he knew very well what these people needed and wanted most. He could give them all, so this was a deal. Mr. Hector is obviously not satisfied with a deal between the Earl and the Church, but as a son and a child, he has no right to blame his father and can only choose to give up the rights of the nobles and a bright future. Praise the Lord of Light. Mr. Hector is simply the embodiment of noble virtues of the nobility. Even if the gods come to the world, they can't compare with his noble qualities, Ryan said very sincerely, and even couldn't help raising his hand to wipe the corners of his eyes with tears. This scene made several nobles around, including the cat man, stunned for a moment. Count Weiss couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Count Winter took a deep breath, and Count Soren reacted. Indeed, Hector has always been a noble of the Empire. Even if he is willing to return to Thundercloud County to inherit the land, we will fully support him. Come back? He will definitely not come back. The nobles of Thundercloud County will definitely be the first to stop him at that time. Well, let's do this. Count Weiss slumped in his chair. At this moment, he seemed to have aged decades, with white hair on his head, turning into an old man. His heart was dead, but he would not die, and he could not die in the Northwind province. He would go to the south of the Empire, to the imperial capital, to tell all the nobles about the merits of the nobles in the Northwind province. Seeing the nobles and the white-haired Count Weiss walking out of the study, all the nobles outside were shocked. They stared at Count Weiss blankly. The price of colluding with the Holy See. I think all the nobles will not forget today, Count Winter said, and all the nobles lowered their heads. No matter what happened in the past, they certainly didn't want to compromise with the Holy See now. Earl Love Weiss will be sent to the Imperial City for trial, and all the members of the Weiss family will follow. The nobles of Thundercloud County must also send their heirs to the Imperial City for trial. You and Earl Weiss have made some unspeakable deals with the Church, Earl Winter said bitterly. But the nobles of Thundercloud County were not happy and stood up excitedly. Governor Winter, what right do you have to slander us? We have never colluded with the Church. It was Earl Weiss's decision alone. It has nothing to do with us. We just participated in the land war, and we only accept the failure of the war. Mr. Earl, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. How could we collude with the Church? We didn't know the Church would appear. Some people were afraid, some were angry. Some were smart and some were stupid. In short, the hall was full of excitement at this moment. Really? Did we listen to Earl Weiss's one-sided words? It's hard to say whether it's true or not, Earl Soren said maturely. Some nobles of Thundercloud County also reacted. The struggles between the nobles often do not force the other party to death. Whenever there is room for maneuver, it is a compromise of interests. Therefore, when Earl Weiss was on his way to the imperial capital, the highest mountain in Lyon County had become a division of Lyon County's land. The nobles. Baron Ryan A. Noble looked at Ryan eagerly, and Ryan, who was well prepared, also took out a note. It contained a description of the merits and benefits of all the nobles in this war. Unexpectedly, after hearing the end, no noble stood up to refute or express dissatisfaction. Therefore, Ryan had another title of fair and just commander. Almost all the nobles were very satisfied with his description of his merits, which made Ryan know that he was probably giving too much. But it doesn't matter. These nobles will become nails in some places in Lyon County. The wealth and benefits brought by this war are countless, but it is precisely because of this that when the nobles of Lyon County ease up, the contradictions with these nobles will inevitably break out. They will become the line of defense in front of Ryan's territory, because in the division of merit, Ryan put his own territory and the interests of Earl Winter and Earl Solon in a safe, non-disputed, and extremely wealthy place. Earl Weiss's territory is very large, especially when Earl Weiss had the ambition to rule the Northwind province a long time ago. He was constantly opening up wasteland. The so-called territory of this earl is the largest among the three earls. It is precisely because of this that when the interests are divided, Ryan gave more credit to all the nobles, and even gave the extra part to Viscount Walter of Iron Mountain County and other nobles of Iron Mountain County. Iron Mountain County has now parted ways with Earl Winter, otherwise Viscount Walter would not have appeared today. The war can end all the favors on both sides, and the nobles who put interests first will not always be loyal to the great nobles. In the war, the losses of Iron Mountain County were very miserable. After the division of Earl Weiss's land interests, only the war compensation was left. All the wealth of Count Weiss, as well as that alternate world, will become compensation options for the failure of the war. Preliminary estimates show that, excluding that alternate world, it will be at least 3.5 million gold coins. To be honest, this number is a bit small for a family of earls with a heritage of hundreds of years or even longer, but according to Count Weiss, he has paid everything for this war, and a large amount of wealth has been sent to the south of the empire and those supporters. Of course, what has not been said is that the eldest son of the earl, Hector, went to the west coast and must have taken away a lot of wealth. In addition, the Thunder Giants, barbarians, alchemists, necromancers, etc. are all big consumers of wealth. This is also normal. The nobles all expressed their understanding, and then their eyes could not help but fall on the nobles of Thundercloud County. No matter how much wealth Count Weiss gave to the south, the wealth left in the nobles of Thundercloud County must be a lot, otherwise it would be impossible for all the nobles of Thundercloud County to support him. The reparations for the war, of course, also include these nobles, who are also the losers of the war. Viscount Hog Ryan said in a low voice, causing many nobles to breathe heavily. Yes, there are also nobles from Yinchuan County, which has the most fertile land in the Northwind province. They are also supporters of Earl Weiss. But for now, it is better to plunder Thundercloud County first. The nearly 800,000 war reparations made Ryan feel the wealth of the nobles in Thundercloud County, but he did not laugh when he saw the murderous eyes of those nobles. Politically, economically, and in terms of land, the victorious nobles will divide up the Thundercloud County. In this process, the nobles are very lively and quarrelsome. Only Baron Ryan, Earl Winter and Earl Solon are relatively calm. In this division, although they got the greatest benefit, it was not as much as they imagined, because a lot was given to other nobles, but all the nobles understood that for the three of them, this feast is not over yet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203. That alternate dimension world is the biggest benefit they can get after winning this war. Many nobles have strange expressions. The two earls are fine. They can afford it because of their big family and big business. Can Baron Ryan afford to play with alternate dimensions? For the nobles outside Lingdu County, they don't know much about the frozen land territory. They just stay in the backwardness, poverty and coldness. The nobles of Lingdu County didn't react much, which made many nobles think about it. Maybe I should learn more about the frozen land territory and Lingdu County in the future. Apart from anything else, the land Baron Ryan got on this division is no less than that of a barren territory. Although it is a separate enclave, every place is a good place. It is not a problem to grow food or extraordinary crops. He also got nearly 300,000 gold coins. This amount is very eye-catching. All the wealth accumulated by a barren territory for hundreds of years will not be so much. So many gold coins are enough to develop a territory in a vivid way. Adding up the benefits, big and small, Ryan's gains were second only to the two earls, and the viscounts only got about 70% to 80% of Baron Ryan's. In addition, the nobles in the other dimension world dared not imagine how much wealth Baron Ryan had already obtained. But thinking of the performance in the war, no one really stood up to refute. Bifang province is a frontier, and the proportion of military strength here is even greater than that of the noble title. Of course, the Baron and Lord are fine, but the Viscount still can't help but complain. After all, Baron Ryan participated in the war for too short a time. Last year, the war started in Tishan County, and this year it also started in the second half of the war. The Baron had nothing to say, and the Viscount certainly couldn't help it. The time for spring plowing has come, but Yinchuan County has not ended yet. Let Baron Ryan go when the time comes, the two earls said so, and Ryan could only obey. Not to mention the journey to Yinchuan County, they had to prepare their own food along the way, and when they arrived in Yinchuan County, it was hard to say whether there would be a war. But this is also a means to shut up those Viscounts. Unless Ryan can gain more benefits for himself in the process of forcing Yinchuan County, otherwise what he got today will eventually spit out tens of thousands of gold coins. It can only be said that it is disgusting. Every noble has a hand, but there is no way. Ryan can't turn his face. Since he has used the rules of the nobles to get benefits in this feast, he must accept compromise under the same rules. This is harmless. Ryan didn't care too much. The army he brought would not affect the spring plowing of Lingdu County. As time passed, another closed-door discussion also appeared. Ryan not only represents the winner of the war, but also the person in charge of Lingdu County. In the meeting that night with only a few people, in addition to the three of them, Viscount Landa and Viscount Walter also appeared quietly in the castle of Lian County. They are the county governors of the two counties, and now they must appear here. Viscount Walter is fine. Tishan County has lost so many people in this war, and the development of the other plane will inevitably give him some benefits. But Viscount Landa made Ryan a little confused. However, he understood it as he discussed it. Viscount Landa and the nobles of Hanshan County suffered too much. Most of the noble families died completely, and all the land and people were gone. They were sympathized and recognized by the nobles in the south. They needed Viscount Landa to connect this war, Earl Weiss and the Orcs' southward migration 2 years ago. The consequence of the lack of a fortress in Xiangshan Plain, which led to the heavy losses in the North Wind Province, was put on Earl Weiss's head. Yes, even though he had just reached a political deal with Earl Weiss here not long ago, he ended up stabbing him in the back at night. This step certainly requires the cooperation of Viscount Landa. After all, he is the one who suffered the most, and only he can make this matter come true. Otherwise, what if Earl Winter said it? The great nobles in the south would think that Earl Winter was unreasonable. The nobles should not force each other to death. You want Earl Weiss to bear such a crime. Isn't it too much? At that time, whether it is sympathy for Earl Weiss or to suppress Earl Winter, this matter will be left unresolved. But Viscount Landa is different. Who says that any noble in the empire is more miserable than them now? Even Count Weiss, who colluded with the Holy See, has an heir who took a lot of wealth to the west coast to enjoy himself. Comparing misery? Who wouldn't? If this succeeds, we will develop allies in the Senate and try to lift the taxes borne by the North Wind Province. It can only be said that the plan is huge, and Ryan felt that his vision and knowledge were narrow at this moment. He was still immersed in this war that belonged only to the North Wind Province, but this great noble was already thinking about using this matter to seek greater benefits. Indeed, the tax of 1.5 million gold coins a year is a huge pressure for the nobles of the entire North Wind Province. They also need money to develop their own power and open up their own land. If the tax is gone, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of gold coins can be saved a year, and the two earls can save even more. Wouldn't it be good to use this money to lick the wounds of the war? This is more important than the reparations for the war. I will try my best to say it, but Viscount Landa looked at these nobles. He did not participate in the war. While he was watching, he also lost a qualification to share the benefits after the victory of the war. Don't worry, there will be a large number of slaves in Lyon County, and they will be sold to you at a minimum price at that time. You won't lose money. When you have manpower, you can participate in the development of the other dimensional world. Earl Winter said this, giving Viscount Landa enough benefits. At the same time, the compensation of Yinchuan County at that time can also be supplemented by some slaves. Hearing this, Ryan nodded. Obviously, no one knows what the royal family thinks of Viscount Hogg. After all, it is the eyes of the royal family in the Northwind province. As for saying that Viscount Hogg colluded with the Holy See, even they themselves would not believe it. It is impossible to use it against Viscount Hogg. They can only suppress and condemn him in terms of the failure of the war. If nothing unexpected happens, Viscount Hogg will still be Viscount Hogg. The key lies in how much benefit they can get from each other. In addition, there is one last thing, Count Soren said leisurely. Catman Assassin. The existence of the Catman Assassin made Ryan's eyes cold. He did not forget that his heart was pierced through his chest. Do you want it? If you don't want it, I will. After Count Soren finished speaking, the others laughed. The Catman Assassin was too good. Even in the chaotic battlefield, he could hide in the shadows. Since Count Soren planned to stay, they would never let him have it all to himself. I want a part 2, let's divide it. There are 5 of us, and each of us will get 20%. Everyone can have hundreds of Catman slaves. A natural assassin, who knows if he will be useful in the future? The church has the same method. Only 5 people participated in this division, and they would say to the outside world that the Catman was dead. Assassins, of course, the fewer people know about it, the better. Chapter 204 Divine Portal. Earl Winter, holding the fangs that contained divinity, came to the top of the mountain in full view of the crowd. With the arrival of spring thunder also fell here. Thunderstorms often resound in Thundercloud County, and most of the thunder appears here, on the highest mountain. I didn't think much of it before, but now it seems that it is because the portal to the other world is located here. The Flying Wolf Cavalry and the Dragon Blood Warrior Corps are on full alert, and Earl Winter also activated the key in his hand at this cloudy noon. It is unknown what kind of powerful creature the huge fangs came from. When the divinity contained in it was activated, everyone could hear a resonance from the void. The ripples in the space rippled, and Countess Winter's eyes were solemn. She seemed to be able to feel the breath from another world. The ancient and wild breath was spreading, and the primitive and barbaric power was so incompatible with this world. A 10-meter-high white light column appeared, and then it was pulled open to both sides like a scroll, turning into a huge portal. Ryan opened his eyes wide. He felt that this was completely different from opening the plane door himself. Such a movement seemed too spectacular and grand, while the portal he opened was like opening a door at random. The gate of divinity connects to the space of another world. Hundreds of Flying Wolf cavalry rushed into the portal. After a moment, Earl Winter, who seemed to have determined the safety in some way, took a deep breath and led the remaining Flying Wolf cavalry into it with the Countess. Then Earl Soren also led the Dragon Blood Warrior army into it. The portal of divinity seems to have some benefits for the extraordinary army. This was said by Viscount Walter, who was standing next to him. His eyes flickered. Like other nobles around, although the 2 earls had already entered, they were still vigilant and hesitant. This is a caution for the unknown. After all, no one knows what kind of world is on the other side of the portal. As nobles, they will never take risks if they can. After all, they talk about the glory of their ancestors, but they basically don't have the courage of their ancestors. Especially before, the 2 earls said that they can't bring the army over now. Viscount Walter hesitated for a long time, but still did not take a step forward. Although the temptation of a world is great, one's own safety is what an excellent noble needs to consider most. Just like the previous war, in the entire battlefield, there were actually only 4 nobles who personally went to the battlefield to fight. The 2 earls, as high-end combat forces, naturally need not be said much. The remaining 2 are all from Lingdu County, the 2 barons Ryan and Enzo. At this moment, facing the gate of the other world, these nobles still dare not take a step easily. Seeing that no one entered, Ryan also understood why the 2 earls thought that the wealth of the other world was their meat, and others could only drink soup. If you don't even dare to see what the other side looks like, how can you get enough benefits from it? Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and led 10 knights in attendance into the divine portal. It feels bad. When the whole person sank into the portal, Ryan was like being wrapped in a dense stream of water. He couldn't move, all his actions seemed powerless, and suffocated. The strong feeling of suffocation made him think he was going to die. He was like being swept by the ocean current, dizzy, and then upside down, being thrown wildly. At the same time, he heard the deafening roar again. The breath of the wilderness was coming, and the ancient and terrible power seemed to crush him. It was obviously just a portal, but Ryan crawled past the elephant like an ant, just passing by. When his vision was restored, he was sweating profusely. Is this the portal of divinity? Witness the power of gods with your own eyes. Ryan was shocked, and Brand and others beside him were not much better. They gasped and then their eyes fell on Ryan. Lord, it's completely different. Rosen's expression was a little ferocious, and for a while he couldn't regain control of the muscles on his face. Shaking his head slightly, Ryan signaled them not to say more, and then his eyes fell on the surroundings. Whether it was the Flying Wolf Cavalry or the Dragon Blood Warriors, they all became soft-footed shrimps at this moment, and they collapsed on the ground one by one. No wonder they wanted to bring the extraordinary army with them. With such a price, if there is any danger here, wouldn't they be at the mercy of others in their current state? Only when there are enough and elite troops can they resist in the process of gradual recovery, even if they encounter danger. It has never been an easy job to shuttle through the gate of the plane. It is conceivable that the nobles who control the plane of the other world probably started with corpses everywhere. Of course, this has nothing to do with Ryan. After passing through the portal of divinity once, he was unwilling to come again. Although the spiritual gate is smaller and shorter, it never feels like this. I adapted so quickly. Countess Winter looked at Ryan and the soldiers around him with some surprise. You know, even the two earls have not completely recovered at this moment. As for her, as a powerful space magician, she had adapted to the distortion of space when she was learning space magic before. At this moment, she was at most immersed in the ancient and powerful power. Looking at the Countess, Ryan always felt that Count Winter was suspected of being a gigolo. After all, in the wars that took place during this period, the magician's performance was always so relaxed, while Count Winter was in crisis several times. However, as the other party's voice pulled him back to reality, Ryan finally looked around. They seemed to be on a mountain top that seemed to be cut in half, leaving a platform. There were serious traces of human beings here, which was obviously the result of Count Weiss's years of cultivation. It was also easy to defend and difficult to attack, and there were fortifications. It seemed that this place was not so peaceful. The barbarians of Count Weiss should have come from here, but the service of those barbarians was not completely voluntary. Ryan analyzed calmly that Count Weiss should not have completely mastered this world, and there were still enemies here. Although they were also enemies of Count Weiss, the natives here probably didn't think so. They would regard Ryan and others as invaders like Count Weiss. Ryan couldn't help but look around. He could see with his naked eyes that the mountain forest with snow-covered treetops was not suitable for any army's attack. Instead, it was very suitable for those barbarians. Chapter 205 Wild World. Ryan had experienced two different planes. One was Ixnel, the plane of the deer spirits. The whole world was covered with snow. The thick snow was enough to cover the knees anywhere. It was a snowfield. The second was the current wilderness world, Svadivari. The wilderness kingdom was filled with the war horses that Ryan hoped for. The world was flat and you could see far away at a glance. This was the third one, which was different from the previous two worlds. It was a world of primitive mountains and forests. The mobility of the Flying Wolf Cavalry was greatly reduced here, because the threats hidden in the dense forests could jump up from anywhere and pick them off. It was just the Dragon Blood Warrior Legion. Count Soren's face was already very ugly. If he was not unwilling to give up the wealth of a world, he would have sent his extraordinary legion back to the Northwind province. Let the heavily armored infantry climb up and down the mountain and fight in the forest? Not to mention that there are only 2,000 Dragon Blood Warriors now. If they were 10 times more, they would be wiped out here. Ryan's eyesight was good. He had seen the flickering black shadows in the foggy mountains in the distance. They were very large and moved very fast. As they walked, snow fell from the treetops above their heads, rustling and startling more wild beasts. Perhaps there were also monsters. Count Weiss explained a lot of things, but he didn't explain too much about this world. At first, the nobles didn't care much, but now looking at this primitive world, they found that they were also tricked by Count Weiss. They were all nobles, and their methods were not much different. They could backstab Count Weiss, and Count Weiss could also disgust them in this alien world. If our extraordinary army wants to make achievements here, the loss will be great, Count Soren said to Count Winter. According to the current situation, it seems that letting ordinary soldiers come here is the most cost-effective. But that would be very troublesome. Spring has arrived, and the territory cannot lack too many young and strong people. In addition, after so long of war, the soldiers are tired of fighting and afraid of death. Letting them come here is probably no different from sending them to die. As time goes by, the development of the alternate dimension world will only become slower and slower. If Count Weiss, who went to the south, told the existence of this world, it would also be troublesome. The nobles in the south are even more difficult to deal with. If Count Soren wants to get a share of the pie, he can think of several reasons. Just look around, and you will know what kind of worlds the alternate dimension worlds we encountered before are. Winter covers almost 90% of the world. The scars left by the pan-dimensional war of gods can be seen almost everywhere. But in this world, the place where they are is not considered low. There are primitive mountains and forests on all sides. Only on the dense treetops is there snow. Most places are clean. This is a world that has not been severely eroded by winter. Just this point, the value of this alternate dimension world is already terrible. Does Count Weiss know? He must know, then the nobles in the south may also know. The extraordinary army can no longer bear more losses, even Countess Winter said. She also understood that after experiencing many wars, the nobles of the North Wind province, including the two earls, have been seriously injured. Slaves and soldiers cannot be moved. The restoration of the territory requires population, and ordinary people in this world will not play a big role. She is a magician. She has mastered the power of space and can sense it more clearly than anyone else. This world is very dangerous. The beasts here are almost all huge beasts. From what she sensed, they were already giants one after another. The power of divinity is like rain that nourishes all life here, she said so, guessing that the gods of this world may not have fallen, and even if they have fallen, they are trying to create new gods. Ryan has not spoken all the time. If Countess Winter's guess is true, then what he sensed is to turn the guess into fact. He looked around, and it seemed that there was a pair of tyrannical and wild eyes staring at them in all directions. The other world is an opportunity, a wealth, and a future, but if the natives of the other world are very powerful, then all these statements can be reversed. They may also become the opportunity of this world. Maybe, we can follow the example of Earl Weiss. Ryan spoke at this time, making several people look over. How did Count Weiss conquer this world in the first place? Barbarians. They can only be barbarians. Maybe the Thunder Giants have contributed to this, but in the final analysis, they are definitely barbarians. We can go find the natives here and reach cooperation with them, use a more gentle way to develop this world. What we need is to turn the resources of this world into wealth, not enemies. Humph, Count Winter snorted coldly. At the end of the previous war, Ryan, you also saw what the damn guy Love did. He used the power of divinity to turn ordinary people into barbarians without wisdom. With this method, I can almost imagine how Love dealt with the natives of this world. The Count Winter family also controls a world, but it is a world that is about to die completely. But Count Winter knows the records of the alternate world very well. When the Winter family first controlled that alternate world, the methods were equally cruel. There is no way. This is inevitable. They need wealth and population slaves, so they must invade and fight against the alternate world. Why hasn't Ryan experienced such a thing? Because he has spirituality and divine blessings. In a sense, he is not an invader, but more like the orthodoxy of those worlds, the successor, and the spokesperson of the existence believed in by those worlds. Without the blessing of the deer spirit, could he really rule the people of Exner? Without the blessing of the horse spirit, would the Brock brothers and sisters trust him so much in the wild world of Svediferi? Impossible. The initial meeting of the two worlds must have been full of aggression and vigilance. He only got what he wanted by getting into the interior of those natives. How do you know if you don't try? This world has the wealth we need, and correspondingly, we must have what the natives here need. A sincere transaction is the basis of mutual trust, Ryan said, and then looked at the two earls. If the earl is willing to believe me, I can do this for you and communicate with those natives, but I need some soldiers, both the Flying Wolf Cavalry and the Dragon Blood Warriors. Ryan certainly couldn't be so kind. He was now eager to find the spirit of this world. As long as he found this spirit, he would get the means of divine blessing from this world. Then who has the final say in this world would have nothing to do with these two earls. But the premise of all this was that he could not avoid contact with the natives. Chapter 206 Savage Natives. Ryan's proposal made the two earls hesitate. They were different from other nobles. As great nobles, they did not covet enjoyment. More often, they were actually the revival pioneers in their respective noble families. Earl Winter was a great noble who went north from the south of the empire. He had ambitions, and Earl Soren was a refugee. As the Earl Soren of the new era, he had to complete many development plans, both to the south and to the north, so he would not lack courage and means. Both of them were in the stage of starting a business, so Ryan did not see too much pedantry among the nobles in them, not even in Earl Weiss. This is actually a trait that most of the nobles in the Northwind province have. Unless their descendants, the interests and wealth of the nobles are stable, their descendants will stick to the original and ancient etiquette and behavior of the nobles. But at least now, the two earls have momentum. In this new alien world, they also want to contact the natives of this world and know their secrets. There are still many things to do in the Northwind province, Countess Winter spoke, which made Earl Winter make a decision. Indeed, although the other world plane is important, the real foundation is still the Northwind province. As the governor of the Northwind province and a great noble, he needs to calm the impact of the previous war as quickly as possible, and use the war to gain enough voice in the south. The center of the world is always in the south. There are countless nobles in the south and the church within the empire. People live in groups, and as a noble, they cannot break away from the circle of nobles. Since the current circle revolves around the south, he must follow the south. This matter is indeed more important than the other world plane. Countess Winter looked at Ryan. This matter will be handed over to Baron Ryan, but if there are magical materials, you need to notify the Winter family as soon as possible. Earl Winter will send troops to the top of the Thundercloud County Mountain. As long as Earl Weiss's castle guards the entrance, there is no need to worry about Ryan secretly getting anything from it. Thinking of this, Earl Winter felt much better. The five of us nobles occupy 60% of the other world, and the rest of the nobles occupy the remaining 40%. You need the magic materials, but I, Earl Soren, don't need them. Earl Soren sneered, which made Ryan sigh in his heart that it came so quickly. The war is over, at least for them. Since there is no war, Earl Soren and Earl Winter are no longer on the same boat. The two families are also full of contradictions, and they will not be polite at this moment. Ryan still remembers that in the Northwind City meeting, Earl Winter called Earl Soren by his name. The nobles call each other by their titles in public, but Earl Winter did not do so at the beginning. If it weren't for Earl Weiss, Earl Winter would be the biggest villain. Everything in this other world belongs to all the nobles. Earl Soren looked at Ryan deeply. The war was over, and he now needed to win over Ryan to his side. As a recognized excellent military commander, Ryan's value has been played, and now the right to speak in Lingdu County is in Ryan's hands. The attack and defense have changed. In the future, the Northwind province will be the time when Earl Solen will take the lead and compete with Earl Winter for interests and wealth. Ryan certainly understood what he meant by saying this, and since Earl Winter did not stay, Earl Solen would definitely not stay either. Not only because Earl Solen could not let Earl Winter's one-sided words be spread out in the south, but also in this alternate dimension world. They believed that Ryan, a baron, had no means to hide things and take them out, but as an earl, he could be sneaky. If there were any treasures that were concealed by Earl Solen, no noble in the Northwind newborn would notice it. They were confident that Ryan could not do it, because there would be a large number of their troops in the castle outside. Don't worry, Earl, Ryan is the most honest. I will never break my promise that the alternate world plane belongs to all the nobles. Ryan apologized to Countess Winter and vaguely stood on the side of Earl Solen. Indeed, now Ryan was unwilling to get close to Earl Winter. Many of his plans will affect the interests of the governor of the Northwind province, and the two sides will not be on good terms. Humph, Count Winter snorted coldly, and took the Flying Wolf cavalry across the divine portal again, leaving behind 100 Flying Wolf cavalry, but also to be stationed on the top of this mountain, and did not give it to Ryan to command. Similarly, Count Soren did almost the same, only giving Ryan 10 Dragon Blood warriors. As for the 100 Dragon Blood warriors he left behind, they will guard the fangs containing divinity together with the Flying Wolf cavalry, which is the key to open the portal to this world. Baron Ryan, the terrain here is not suitable for the Dragon Blood warriors to move, so don't send them out. Count Soren said so. What else can Ryan say? He was too lazy to take the 10 dragon blood warriors, and walked out along the stairs with Brand and others. He tried it before, and his plane door can still be opened here. In other words, it must be said that Ryan has become much bolder after the war. In this plain world, Count Weiss also worked hard because he opened up the road. The road was very wide and very solid. After thinking about it, Ryan probably knew what was going on. Giant, Count Weiss used a giant to crush all the stones in the forest and pull out the trees, and then compacted this oil with great force to form such a wide road. Giants, only giants can do this, and the rest, even the legendary knights, are not even 1% as good as giants. If he had a giant, Ryan couldn't imagine how wide and neat the road in the frozen land would be. Unfortunately, Ryan just thought about this, but suddenly felt a sharp edge shooting from the shadow of the dense forest on the side. Before he could make a move, Brand beside him had already rushed out. Brand, a silver knight, who was comparable to the physique and strength of a gold knight, was like a mighty stag charging towards the forest. His feet were like flat ground, and the stones or branches along the way could not stop his footsteps at all. Soon Ryan heard the roar and the sound of fighting. When he led his men to support them, hundreds of native soldiers holding iron spears in the dense forest launched a fearless attack on them. The weakest of the 10 knights' attendants had broken through the bronze knights in the war. More importantly, they were wearing full body armor, and the weapons that the natives had snatched from Count Weiss could not break through their defenses. With the death of more than a dozen warriors, the remaining natives still did not react and continued to use their flesh and blood to test the strength of the knights. Chapter 207 Cold Heart. Capture them alive, Ryan gave an order, and the knights withdrew their strength. In less than 10 minutes, the ground was already covered with the wailing native warriors, but their eyes looking at Ryan and others were still full of hatred. The offensive power of the curses in their mouths was not strong, and Ryan only felt that they were so simple. However, the language was interoperable. Is this the wisdom brought by the gods? Ryan heard that the language of these natives was no different from that of Norris continent where he was, but they had accents because they did not communicate with more people. This reason can only be attributed to the convenience of the gods. Otherwise, the two worlds, especially this world, seem to have not been developed, would definitely have different languages. Only the gods can shuttle between the worlds at will. Ask, Ryan said, without him having to do it himself. Rosen and others had already punched and kicked again, asking who was in charge of the tribe behind these natives. However, no natives answered, and one of them kept yelling and cursing over and over again, with an expression of heroic sacrifice, justice against evil. This look made Ryan laugh. He said to Rosen, "Go, chop off the hand of the man next to him. If he still doesn't say anything, chop off the other hand." The native was not very smart, and it seemed that he hadn't reacted yet. Rosen had already raised the knight's sword with a sneer. "No, you chop me, chop off my hand," the native youth roared and struggled frantically, but Rosen ignored him. Puff, blood splashed on the young man's face. He stared blankly at his companion who was screaming with his hand covering his broken arm, as if he had never thought that there would be such an ending. To deal with barbarism, you have to be more barbaric than them. Civilization is useless in front of these natives. Continue, Ryan said calmly. Rosen had already stepped on the native who was howling in pain, and slowly raised the knight's sword in his hand. "No, don't," I said, "Pa, you can't say it." The warrior who covered his arm stared at the young man, but the latter did not dare to look him in the eye. "We will return to the embrace of the mountains and forests, and this damned invader will suffer the revenge of the gods. Don't scream, even if the gods exist, they will not avenge you." Rosen kicked over and then looked at the young man. "There is no one left in our tribe?" the young man finally roared, with hatred in his eyes. "Everyone has been captured by you and sacrificed to the devil." His eyes turned red as he spoke, and the other warriors around him were almost unable to care about the pain in their bodies. They struggled to get up and attack the knights again. Ryan thought of the tens of thousands of warriors wearing animal skins on the battlefield of Leine Gorge before. It was hard to tell whether they were men or women, but when he cleaned up the battlefield later, he found that there were many female barbarians among them. The natives of this world have no extraordinary means, so they naturally cannot fight against Earl Weiss, especially the Thunder Giant. He didn't know how desperate these natives were when the giant appeared. "We are not the ones who took them away. Why did you attack us? You are all the same, you are devils." The young man looked at Ryan. "If it weren't for this noble, how could you betray the tribe and tell them the secrets of the tribe? This is our homeland, And all of you invaders deserve to die. You also sacrificed our people to the devil, letting their souls be devoured, and you also manipulated their bodies to kill our people." The young man became more and more excited, and his body kept struggling. "Invaders." Ryan slowly walked in front of the young man, and Brand beside him followed closely. In the unfamiliar environment, he wanted to make sure that there would be no threats around Ryan. The huge force of Ryan's foot fell on the young man, and the latter could not move at all. "Then I have to tell you, there is only one kind of people in the world who will die, and that is the weak." Ryan turned his head and looked at the dim mountains and forests around him. "Break their legs. I think they will know what invaders are." Ryan felt it. Of course, these natives knew what blood would attract. They screamed in fear, but it was useless. In the previous battle, many native warriors had their legs broken. At this moment, they could not run at all. After screaming, Ryan and others stood in the distance and looked at this side. Gradually, the black shadows in the forest appeared. There were 3 black bears. They were very excited when they smelled the blood, but what surprised everyone was the size of these black bears. The black bears stood up and were more than 5 meters long. If they were fully stretched out, they would be even bigger. This exceeded Ryan's cognition of the appearance of black bears. Magic beasts? Not like. Without the fluctuation of magic power, these black bears were wild beasts, not magical beasts. The black bears kept approaching, and some other wild beasts appeared in the forest. They showed hungry eyes and were also huge and wild. "Deal with them," Ryan frowned. The knights around him had already rushed out again. The fighting power of these black bears was so strong that Ryan felt like he was facing the frost python. However, Brand and Ryan's soldiers were no longer ordinary people. After fighting for 15 minutes, 1 black bear was left behind, and 2 black bears fled with bloody wounds. Wild beasts are also intelligent and will run away when they are injured. As for the one that was left behind, it was purely because it was unlucky and faced Brand. Kill them. Although Ryan didn't want to see these natives being eaten by wild beasts, he would not be merciful. After experiencing the war, he found that he was getting calmer and calmer about the dead and killing. Beside him, Brand was a little reluctant. He was righteous, so Ryan didn't let him do it. "Maybe he can be a slave in the frozen land," Brand said, but Ryan still shook his head. "It's too dangerous. Their power is stronger than that of ordinary people. It would be fine if there were soldiers watching them, but if not, they would definitely kill the people of the frozen land." Ryan can accept the civilians of the worlds of Exner and Svediferi because they are civilized, knowledgeable and can be educated, but this world is different. The cost of educating the primitive and barbaric natives is too high. What's more, they think that Ryan and Count Weiss are the same people. Ryan can't explain this. He can only say that the mess left by Count Weiss, Ryan doesn't want to spread to the frozen land. Even now, there are a lot of contradictions among the people of the frozen land, many of which are contradictions in life, but often because of the origin of the problem. Some people gather together, and then both sides make trouble. And these contradictions will not evolve into big contradictions. Why? Because those people know their original world, their hometown can no longer survive, especially Exner has completely died. They will not miss their hometown. As for Svediferi, there is only one tribe in the wilderness world. They are eager to live in groups with more people, otherwise their tribe will gradually perish. This world is different. When you look up, there is only white snow on the treetops above your head. Relatively speaking, it is still a world where you can survive. It's not that they can't survive, nor that they have nowhere to stay. If Ryan captures them, they will just think they are the same as Count Weiss before. In this case, these barbarians are more difficult to educate than orc slaves. For the noble territories, they are an absolute destabilizing factor. The most important thing is that Ryan has not become the spokesperson for the gods in their hearts. Chapter 208: The Nobles and the Truth of the World. Ryan and Brand explained that he had enough patience and tolerance for his guardian knight. The young man who was in the snow was growing up little by little. After coming to this world, Brand experienced a completely different life from before. In the former Ixnal, he went out to find food and listened to the stories of more than 100 years ago told by the elders in the village, but he had never seen a different world outside of ice and snow. Until he came to the frozen land and came to this world, he experienced a lot and saw a lot, but it was also because of this that the young man became silent, because he needed to adapt to the different world. But he never changed his heart. His original intention was still the Brand who was discovered by Ryan in the village. He was growing up and maturing, but he was still him. Brand was different from Brock and Etria. The two brothers and sisters could still talk, of course, they were more tireless ironwork. If it weren't for what Earl Weiss did, perhaps the natives of this world would become our friends, but since it has happened, Ryan pointed at the natives that Rosen was killing. They never thought of distinguishing us. In other words, they were dead when Earl Weiss captured all the people, and all they had left was hatred for us. All we can do is to make ourselves stronger, so that one day we won't become like them. Norris continent, which is our world, you shouldn't know much about it, Brand. I only heard from Harrington and the others that the south is warm and the west coast is prosperous, Brand said truthfully. He had been to the imperial capital city, and everything he saw along the way was very different, different from Mixnell, different from the frozen territory, everything was different. But do you know the truth? Ryan said, I have only recently figured out something, that is, the prosperity of the empire and the prosperity of the Norris continent. In fact, there is a huge reason behind it, that is, the resources of the Norris continent and the empire have never been one world or one piece of land, it's many worlds, just like the frozen territory. If there were no other worlds, the frozen territory would be very poor and miserable. This is the case with Earl Weiss, Earl Winter, and the former Earl Soren's family. This is the case with the Northwind province, the empire, and the entire southern land. Many other dimensional worlds have been found by powerful transcendents. Those legends can even turn divinity into their own power. This is a world, but it is connected to many lands with resources from other dimensional worlds. Do you think you are the only outsiders? No, the people living in this world have never been people from just one world, but natives of many worlds. Some of them even still exist as nobles. It's just that you don't know, because their arrival may date back to 100 years ago. Many people you hear and see now may be descendants of those who came to Norris continent from other worlds. After all, it's because of the pan-dimensional war of the gods. It's never just one or two worlds that are facing the erosion of winter and the inability to survive. Ryan learned a lot and heard a lot about the war in the Northwind province. Naturally, he also guessed a lot. For example, the Earl of Winter's family, as a great noble from the south. Did he abandon all his roots in the south after coming to the Northwind province? How big would the fiefdom of an Earl noble be? Did Earl Winter give up the position of governor of the Northwind province? Impossible, but Ryan had never heard of any industry of the Earl of Winter's family in the south. Then the only answer is that they have no land. Without land, they can come to the Northwind province, because here, the empire promised to grant Earl Winter a fiefdom after the victory of the war. Why would a great noble have no land? There are two possibilities. One possibility is that Earl Winter comes from the land covered by ice and snow in the north of the Norris continent. He is a noble from those lands. Another possibility is that he comes from another world. Ryan tends to believe the second possibility, because Earl Winter's family has no communication with the nobles in the south, that is, the southern nobles outside the empire, except for some nobles in the empire. The circle of nobles is very small, even in the former Norris continent. The nobles of the northernmost kingdom may have a marriage relationship with the nobles in the southernmost kingdom. As long as there is such a relationship, it can be established. As long as the nobles are passed down for a long time, it is a huge spider web. Many corners of the spider web may not be useful, but there will always be a time when the spider will crawl to those corners. And the Earl Winter family is indeed not a noble with a simple background. They have been passed down for a long time. Since it is so long, but they have not formed a spider web, then what is the answer? It can only be that they have not had time to weave their own spider web in a new world. One Earl Winter is like this. How many nobles like Earl Winter are there in the empire? There will definitely be no shortage. Especially in the provinces on the northern border of the empire, I'm afraid there are many nobles with such origins. As Ryan's horizons and knowledge became wider and wider, he gradually realized that this kind of thing was not surprising. He was even thinking about another thing. That is the Marquess among the 5 nobles. Among the 5 nobles, the Marquess is special because they all come from the royal family. There are as many provinces in the empire besides the Northwind province as there are powerful marquesses. Every Marquess is a member of the Columbus royal family. They are the eyes of the royal family, staring at every province. This also leads to the fact that among the 5 nobles of the empire, the Grand Duke is the highest, but the next is the Earl. The reason why some earls are close to the Grand Duke but are difficult to be promoted to the title is the same. Why is the Columbus royal family so powerful? As the only powerful empire owner who survived the pan-dimensional war of gods, is it difficult for them to make a fortune from war, the fall of gods, and the fortune of the other world? Moreover, if the royal family is powerful, then aren't the 4 Grand Dukes powerful? Grand Duke Myers conquered the entire Northwind province, and even though he was given a bunch of pioneering orders, he didn't turn against the empire. Why? Because in Grand Duke Myers' view, these losses of interests were not enough to turn against him. Simply put, it was not worth turning against the empire and the royal family for such a small matter. In the same way, isn't the Earl of Clayton's family, where Ryan came from, powerful? Do you really think that Earl Clayton led 30,000 Flame Dragon Knights straight into the north and killed through the Mammoth people's territory because of legends and dragons? How did their strength and wealth come from? This is not difficult to guess. As Ryan stepped into a larger and higher circle, many truths were self-evident. Chapter 209 Negotiations in Yinchuan County. Everything stems from the pan-dimensional war of the gods. Yes, everything nowadays is inseparable from the pan-dimensional war of the gods. In the eyes of the gods, mortals have become so powerful that they can fight against the power of the gods because of the gods' own war. In a world where gods are confirmed to exist, there is still a struggle between divine power and royal power. This is the performance. If it were in the past, how could the empire have the strength to fight against a church that has the blessing and faith of the gods? But now the empire has the upper hand. Brand was visibly relieved, and Ryan ordered other knights in attendance to drag the body of the Black Bear and embark on the return journey. He already knew what this world discovered by Earl Weiss looked like, and he didn't plan to develop it on a large scale for the time being. There was not enough time and manpower. Now that the war is over, the nobles of the Northwind province are busy with spring plowing and eliminating the impact of the war. Stability is always the most urgent desire of the noble lords. Ryan is not only in front of the matter, he also needs to go to Yinchuan County. The huge black bear shocked the members of the extraordinary legion guarding the gate, but no one stopped Ryan or anything. What's wrong with a nobleman getting food in another world? Ryan didn't eat alone, but distributed the black bear meat to the nobles who were still in the castle. The food from another world, more importantly, came from another world, which made the nobles' appetites whetted. 2 days later, Ryan led the army of Lingdu County to Yinchuan County. After a few days of rest, although the army had become elite after the tempering of the war, Ryan could see that few people were willing to continue the war. The war was over, and many soldiers from other noble territories had left these days. Only they were still stationed, eager to go home, and even Ryan couldn't stop it. Ryan could only hope that Viscount Hogg of Yinchuan County would be more sensible. Everyone is good to me. You pay me compensation well, so that I can speak for you. If a war breaks out, he can't guarantee whether his army can defeat Viscount Hogg. There is no way, the military spirit and morale are gone. However, Viscount Hogg was not as strong as imagined. When Ryan entered Yinchuan County, he had arranged for someone to meet him. Thousands of troops marched into Viscount Hogg's territory, and Ryan, Baron Enzo and other lords were invited into the gorgeous castle. Among all the nobles in the entire Northwind province, perhaps only Viscount Hogg's castle is the most beautiful. The creepers were kept green, and the orchid vines that fell from the top of the castle were partially woven into swings. Every swing seemed to bring down petals like rain. The standing paintings carved by craftsmen on the city walls were also lifelike. Most importantly, there are waterfalls and hot springs in the castle. Ryan could only sigh at Viscount Hogg's wealth and his efforts to please the royal woman. Baron Ryan, I heard that you have married Viscount Melendez's family. Do you want me to tell you some of my experience? Viscount Hogg smiled at Ryan. He was a noble who had a spider web and could quickly pass on news between nobles. Of course, this was also a vague message. That is Viscount Hogg, who is actually the same kind of person as Baron Ryan, with a huge spider web under his feet. And they should stand together. This also made Ryan feel the political stance within the empire. I am afraid that there is no lack of stance divisions among the nobles due to background. He also understood more clearly what Viscount Hogg meant, which was nothing more than to show mercy and let him bleed less. When Ryan walked into the hall of the castle, there were other nobles from Yinchuan County here. Strictly speaking, they are also supporters of Earl Weiss, at least last year. They can't get rid of the relationship. Apart from anything else, the nobles of Tishan County will definitely bite to death. These nobles have not thought about muddling through, but they plan to pay a price to settle the matter. In short, It can be seen that Viscount Huag's prestige has suffered a great blow, because his decision has caused heavy losses to the nobles of Yinchuan County. Since everyone is here, why not solve the problem first? Otherwise, the banquet prepared by Viscount Huag tonight may not be lively, Ryan said straight to the point, and these nobles nodded solemnly. They also wanted to end it early. The losses in the war were too great, and the springtime could not allow them to delay. If they did not want to be remembered, they would have wanted to communicate directly with Baron Ryan. This year's war and last year's war, to put it in a big way, is the war between the Empire and the Church. As soon as Ryan opened his mouth, a Baron could not help but stand up. Baron Ryan, don't say it casually. Our war is just a conflict between the nobles of Tishan County. Baron Poole, don't worry. Ryan drank some water tactically. Bifang province needed wine, but brewing wine required a lot of grain. To put it in a small way, the war can also be regarded as a continuation of the land war. After all, in our Bifang province, many lords rely on nobles in different counties. Ryan smiled, and this time the nobles understood. This war is of course a continuation of the land war, but it's a pity that the nobles of our Yinchuan County lost. When Baron Poole said this, he couldn't help but glance at Viscount Huag, who didn't look so good. Because some nobles have already started passing notes with the war reparations of that noble. Ryan put down the things in his hands and said, according to the two earls, this matter is a conflict between the nobles of Yinchuan County and the nobles of the 5 counties, so the money is not enough. Some nobles gnashed their teeth in their hearts. Ryan was not satisfied with the wealth they took out. What a joke, who can be satisfied? These nobles are not even willing to break their bones for this war. They divide the little things they took out. And how many gold coins will fall into each person's pocket? 5 counties? Baron Ryan will not include Viscount Landa and others, right? This is the decision of the nobles, Ryan said, and also took out a note. 100,000 gold coins for each baron, and Viscount Huag's compensation of 300,000 gold coins. Why don't you go and rob? Even Viscount Huag couldn't help but clench his fists. This is the decision of the nobles. Ryan pulled out all the nobles again. It's funny. He came to help everyone collect debts. It doesn't make sense that all the hatred should be eaten by himself. I believe you gentlemen can still afford this wealth, but you don't have to give me my share. Ryan stretched out his hand and crossed out his share, which was about 1/10 less for each noble. But there are also requirements. The nobles stared at Ryan and knew he would say this. This devil from the frozen land, his negotiation skills are never worse than his military talent. Viscount Huag couldn't help but grit his teeth and even wanted to refuse, but when he thought of the share of 30,000 gold coins, he held back. Let's hear what he says first. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Homecoming. What Ryan wants is very simple, that is, in the future, the goods of the frozen land and Lingdu County will have the qualifications to compete fairly in Yinchuan County. The nobles of Yinchuan County all felt a little puzzled about this condition. Some of them did not understand the meaning of it. What benefits could Ryan get from it? But thinking of the gold coins in comparison, the nobles could not find a reason to refuse. This war reparations cannot be negotiated. In addition to the part of Ryan that appeared in front of them, the remaining 90% is still a huge pressure for them, and it may be difficult to ease in the next 10 or even 20 years. But they must give it, otherwise it will be a new round of war. Count Weiss is not the opponent of the nobles, let alone the nobles of Yinchuan County now. After thinking for a long time, Viscount Huag couldn't figure out what the purpose of Ryan's condition was, and he finally agreed. There is no reason to refuse, even if you think it is wrong, you still have no choice. Otherwise, it is the golden coins that are given to Ryan. Compared with invisible things, they prefer to hold the gold coins in their hands. Ryan was not surprised. Free trade is a double-edged sword. Of course, for the current situation, there is no double-edged situation. Perhaps, in the future, Yinchuan County will only have a beginning to describe today. At first, no one cared about this transaction. After the contract was signed, Ryan sent someone to send its copy to the hands of several other nobles. Here, it was completely declared that the war in the North Wind province was over. He was finally able to return to the frozen land territory and return to his own territory. People's sorrows and joys are not the same. Riding on the warhorse on the way home, Ryan thought of the nobles in Yinchuan County who were not willing to keep him, and couldn't help but smile. It seems that these nobles will not hold any banquets for a long time in the future. On the contrary, another part of the nobles will probably squander a lot of money in the next few years. For Ryan, this is an opportunity. When he can no longer use war as a source of wealth, he will inevitably focus on the economy of the territory. Goods from another world should be very popular among the nobles in the North Wind Province, right? After walking from Yinchuan County to Lian County, Ryan finally returned to Lingdu County. He brought many contracts and countless wealth. The light of gold coins shone in the eyes of the nobles of Lingdu County, so that the voices that were originally intended to question the heavy losses of the army were gone. Baron Ryan, have a good journey. Under the city of Lingdu, Ryan turned around and saw smiling faces. Turning around, he led his own hundreds of soldiers towards the north. We still have to continue to repair this road. The road that was originally built with orc slaves was no longer the same after only a year. You said that when more people walk, the road will appear. Brand next to him said something rare, which made Ryan couldn't help laughing. Indeed, many people will walk on this road in the future, frozen territory. It was already spring plowing outside, but the frozen land was still covered with snow. The castle on the Rhino Horn Mountain was flashing lights as if to welcome Ryan's return. There were shadowy figures on the distant peaks. The snow was being cleared, turning into cold water drops flowing at the foot of the mountain, and finally washing the surface of the frozen river smooth and clean. The nobles' joys and sorrows were not the same. When the nobles of Yinchuan County and Lian County were trying to raise money, Ryan had already squandered the wealth he earned in the castle. After adulthood, life at night is always rich. Today, Master Ryan once again celebrated with the people. Celebrate the success of the war, celebrate Ryan's return to his loyal land, and celebrate the appearance of fine wine on the cold frozen land. For 3 consecutive days, Ryan finally climbed up from the Viscountess. Walking out of the door, looking at the butler Beard standing respectfully. The dragon heart my father sent me is indeed powerful. With a sigh, Ryan came to the top of Rhino Horn Mountain. Standing here, he could see that the terraces had become incompatible with the surrounding snow with the help of charcoal ashes. Although we have managed to get a lot of food, the arable land in the territory still needs to be developed. We must be self-sufficient. Follow your wishes, Beard replied respectfully behind him. Have the divisions for the militia arrow towers and hunters been determined? It has been determined. Miss Etria has designated 3 hunting grounds in the northern foothills, which rotate between spring and autumn and summer and winter to ensure that the prey resources will not be exhausted. Miss Etria also plans to introduce horned deer to live in the territory to ensure their reproduction. Master Brock personally led the militia to the northern peaks and personally selected 2 peaks. He will lead the craftsmen to build 2 watchtowers on the peaks, each of which can station 30 to 50 soldiers. Beard pointed to 2 high places within the field of vision. According to Brock, as long as the watchtowers are built in those 2 places, any movement entering the frozen land from the east, west and north will be captured. The plan for the watchtower was decided by Ryan a long time ago. The terrain of the frozen land is high and low. After all, it is a barrier that blocks the winter wind and snow in the south of the empire. The complex terrain and landforms are destined to make it impossible for the naked eye to see everything at a glance, so the existence of the watchtower is very necessary. They will be the eyes of the frozen land and can also train scouts. The soldiers will prevent all the monsters that break into the frozen land, and then arrange soldiers in the territory to hunt. To a certain extent, this is to ensure the stability of the frozen land, as well as to protect and supervise the farmers who cultivate the terraced fields. They are also Ryan's tentacles. When there is nothing important in the south, these tentacles can help Ryan reach the depths of the north. His territory will also become huge because of the watchtowers. According to Master Brock, as long as the watchtower is successfully built, the second-level peak monsters can be defended, and the third-level monsters can also be deterred. According to the sketch you gave at the beginning, Master Brock is trying to forge a giant crossbow. If it succeeds, it can ensure that the watchtower will have the power to fight against monsters alone. Ryan finally couldn't help hearing this, with a strange expression. Can he really succeed? He knew how rough the sketch of the bed crossbow he drew later was. I heard that he found a way after going to the south, Beard said truthfully, finally making Ryan feel relieved. He knew that he was not qualified to take this credit. But how come he has so much time? Ryan certainly would not forget that he still had a deal with the Chamber of Commerce to complete. During the war, the nobles of the entire Lingdu County were also very busy forging iron ore into weapons. The most important of these was of course the Snow Dragon Song series of knight swords, forged by Brock himself. In fact, it was precisely for this reason that the nobles of Lingdu County did not hold Ryan back during the war, and handed over all the power to him. Chapter 211 Noble Mages and Commoner Mages. Master Brock said he only plans to forge 30 Snow Dragon Song knight swords. He said you said that things are valuable because they are rare. Ryan was speechless. Brock was an avid blacksmith. If possible, he would stay in the blacksmith shop forever. So he disagreed with this statement. There could only be one reason, that is, Brock didn't want to waste time on it. The watchtower, the giant crossbow and so on obviously attracted his attention more. Then let's do it. When the Lantern Chamber of Commerce and the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce arrive, remember to find more reasons. Hearing this, Beard also laughed. Master, the people from Exner in your territory are very good at this. The trade officers you asked me to select are almost all from Exner. During this period, Viscountess Whitman arranged for people to teach them to learn writing and mathematics. As for stories and wine, it seems that they are born with them and don't need to be cultivated at all. If the master needs it, those trade officers can take office now. Ryan nodded. Next, the Frozen Land territory does need to start the war from the economic perspective. Tell them to get ready. During Ryan's absence, the Frozen territory was not idle. It can even be said that civilians and slaves were not qualified to be idle. Even the Frozen territory, with a population of more than 20,000, was very busy. However, for today's era, the types of economic crops that a frozen territory can produce are not rich. They are mainly high-end handicrafts and textiles of both high and low quality. The most important thing is that the things grown in the soil are processed into profitable commodities. Finally, there are various iron tools and wooden tools. In fact, for now, these things are the mainstream and can bring more wealth. Most of the nobles in the Northwind province also use them to gain wealth. Who makes this place have the richest iron ore resources in the empire? In short, in the plan, the sale of food, clothing, housing and transportation will be owned, even including the future horses, not war horses, but ordinary horses. The cattle and sheep in the wilderness are also within the scope of sale. With the unique specialties of the North, Ryan is confident that his small-scale workshop trade can be turned into a huge chamber of commerce. The Northwind province does not have its own chamber of commerce, so let Ryan be the first person to eat crabs. The family he married into, the Melendez family, could earn a lot of wealth by relying on a river. Ryan, who had a huge northern territory, would he still lack resources? At the foot of the Rhino Horn Mountain, Master Luna, who had gained a lot of magical knowledge, had already begun to implement his own magic plan. During this war, I got some land suitable for growing magic crops in Thundercloud County. In addition to growing raw materials for potions to breed war horses, I can also leave 5 pieces of land of about 100 acres in the surrounding areas. Does Master Luna need it? The biggest shock to Ryan in this war was undoubtedly the power of those extraordinary powers. Therefore, he naturally valued Master Luna more. There are differences between people, and there are also great differences between magicians. There is also a difference between noble magicians and civilian magicians among magicians. The basis is not because of status, but it is closely related to status. Noble magicians are not necessarily nobles, but they must have the wealth of nobles. For example, if Ryan has a talent for magic, then he will not choose the direction of auxiliary magic, but practice magic with powerful combat power like Countess Winter. There is a key point, that is, if you want to practice such powerful magic, you need to spend a lot of time, energy, and money. Magicians who don't have much wealth can't afford to play this kind of magic with a combat orientation. They will choose the magic direction that can earn gold coins, and then use the gold coins earned to improve themselves, or choose to practice more magic. Only at this time will they consider whether to practice magic with powerful combat power. Noble mages don't need to consider the cost of time and money, especially the great nobles. When they are detected to have a strong magical talent, their families will prepare a lot of wealth. Civilian mages have a lot to consider. For example, those mages who are funded have already owed a large debt in the practice of magicians. Of course, they need to pay off the debt and make themselves rich. But magic that is good at combat often cannot bring huge wealth, and can only be used as an offering to the nobles, and get a fixed part every year. Therefore, there is a distinction between noble mages and civilian mages. Noble mages are often powerful, and the magic they release at will can destroy life, while civilian mages tend to society and life, using extraordinary abilities to obtain wealth and further resources. After all, if you can achieve legend, there will be no distinction between civilian mages and noble mages. Even a legendary mage who only knows one kind of magic is extremely powerful. This is the case with Master McKen. He is not rich, so he chose magic that can make more money. Gradually, he has the ability to make a lot of money, if he wants. The former Master Luna was between the two. After all, in Exner, the city of the furnace, the practice in that place needs more or less everything, especially in terms of survival. But when Master Luna became a golem puppet, she tended to be more like a noble mage. Countess Winter is a typical noble mage. The wealth of the Earl's noble family allows her to squander those powerful magics without worrying about the pressure of time. Ryan, who has seen the powerful space magic strangle the steel dragon, how could he not care? Even if he and Count Winter start a war in the future, he must consider what means he has to deal with this space mage. As a lord, Ryan's subordinates cannot only have civilian mages who earn wealth, but also need noble mages who can keep this wealth. Ah, really? Mage Luna opened her eyes wide. Those are 2 crystal gems, a little surprised, and then she counted on her fingers. The 5 pieces of land are not too far apart, so we have to consider whether the magic will affect each other. So, almost quickly, Mage Luna made a decision and gave the names of 6 magical crops. Lionstone flowers can be buried in the land, dragon skin pine can be planted in the gaps between lionstone flowers, and wolf tooth grass cannot exist within 1 meter of other things. This of course requires Ryan to buy the initial seeds, and even use life magic for the initial birth. This is not a problem for the current frozen land territory. Ryan, who recruited the great mage McKen, did not get a magician who could breed war horses and several magicians who could help the territory develop. There are also circles and channels that they have. Chapter 212, Scarcity of Talent. Ryan found that he was still not at ease. Except for the first 3 days after returning to the frozen land, he was extremely busy every day. The arrangement of the land in Thundercloud County, the exchange of compensation with the defeated nobles, the pioneering plan of the frozen land, the preliminary plan for economic development, the progress of the breeding of war horses by the great wizard McKen on the wilderness, the blessing and training of the army. A lot of things began to press on Ryan, especially when each of these things required a large number of manpower. The number of people reported by the butler Beard was a headache for Ryan. Manpower, no matter which direction of planning and action, manpower is needed. But Ryan just didn't have so many suitable people under his command. He had tried very hard to let Viscountess Whitman and Butler Beard cultivate talents and knowledge in management, but there were still a lot of gaps. This inevitably led to the stagnation of his own knight training progress, but which of these things was not important? Even the transactions with the Lantern Chamber of Commerce, the selection and purchase of magic materials and crops, and the grain trade with the Gargoyle Count in Danube Province have not been counted, and they have been delayed again and again by Ryan. At this time, Ryan didn't know whether he should be happy that his territory has become so powerful, or whether he should be helpless that his steps were too big at once. No wonder, the development of a noble family cannot be solved by 1 generation. It often takes several generations or even more than 10 generations to accumulate a strong foundation. Why? Of course, it is because if there is only 1 generation, there are really too few people who can be trusted and used. For the nobles, brothers and sisters are natural retainers. They are attached to noble elder brother, enjoy the rights of the nobles, and are the most loyal supporters. There are a bunch of brothers and sisters in 1 generation, and in 2 or 3 generations, there will be dozens of core followers. Their families and downward relationships will all be like a pyramid to protect the power of the nobles. It is very troublesome for someone like Ryan. He was separated from the family. For the time being, he is alone, and there are very few available people around him. All things will be on his shoulders. Even though he has handed over the government affairs of the frozen land to Etria, he is still very busy every day. But for the family of Count Winter, it is relatively easy. Count Winter has a large family around him. Especially when he has not yet branched out, there are many family members, and they often need to compete to get to the top. These people can help Count Winter share most of the pressure, and there is no need to worry about their loyalty. As a result, the Earl can become a Holy Knight. If it is the same as Ryan's situation, it is questionable whether Count Winter can become a Sky Knight. Count Soren is an example. The number of people in this Earl's family is not prosperous. Being able to become a Sky Knight is purely because of Count Soren's talent and a lot of resources. Perhaps, I should write to the Clayton family and find a way to recruit some members of the Clayton family to come to the frozen land. Ryan thought so, and then began to write a letter. As far as he knows, the Clayton family does not have a deep foundation among the great nobles of the empire, but because of the special bloodline, they are very fertile, which leads to the fact that even among the members of the Earl family, there are still many people whose ambitions cannot be fulfilled. Especially before Ryan's father's generation, the Clayton family was not strong at that time, and the wealth and industry were not rich enough, so naturally there would be many more people. Even Ryan's generation still has an unpredictable future. For example, his brothers and sisters, the girls are okay, the Countess will find a way to help them marry a good family, but for men, at present, only Ryan and his brother have the title. As long as they see that the frozen land can bring them a bright future, they will still come even if it is in the Northern Territory. Thinking of this, Ryan's writing speed gradually increased. Of course, he still has to tell Beard to continue to train suitable young people, who will become capable ministers and generals in his territory. The frozen land has a population of more than 20,000, and the talents trained so far are less than 100. How can this be enough? The pressure of talents will take a certain amount of time anyway. Before that, Ryan can only deal with more and more affairs in the frozen land with a bitter face. In the time that passed, the Lantern Chamber of Commerce and the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce also received the weapons forged by all the nobles of Lindu County, as promised. They will be delivered to the nobles in the south, and most of them may be directly delivered to the Thousand Lakes province, where the war is breaking out. Snow Dragon Song will definitely let those guys in the south hear the roar from the north. This is Irina's solemn declaration after she excitedly received 10 Snow Dragon Song night-long swords forged by Brock himself. Then she signed a contract for arms trading with the Frozen Territory again, so that no one else would find the Frozen Territory as a product origin after she left. As a reward, a team belonging to the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce will appear in the Frozen Territory again in the summer, bringing a large number of goods that Ryan needs and has already purchased. The transaction of up to 250,000 gold coins is worth the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce's special trip to the Frozen Territory. The moment the contract was established, Ryan once again became a poor man. Counting the magic materials for the warhorse and the construction materials for the wizard tower that he had purchased before, Ryan now couldn't even take out 10,000 gold coins. This forced him to re-examine his economic plan. The war did bring Ryan a lot of wealth, but this wealth could not be obtained in an instant. For example, the compensation from the nobles of Lion County would take at least 3 to 5 years to fall into his hands. For example, the compensation from Yinchuan County was to open the door to absolute free trade, which required time to settle. Sometimes Ryan himself would wonder if the power of the nobles was too great. The Lord had absolute power over the territory. Otherwise, how could Ryan go to such great lengths to talk about free trade? We are all nobles of the same empire, nobles of the Northwind province, but there is still something like commercial tax, which is unreasonable no matter how you look at it. However, he couldn't help but think of another question. Even the nobles in the empire were like this. Wouldn't it be even more so between countries? In that case, isn't my previous transaction with the Viscount of the Andorra Kingdom smuggling? Ryan blinked his eyes, as if Maholi had indeed come secretly, and Bild had also secretly delivered the weapons over. Chapter 213 The Art of Language. After the foreign affairs of the Frozen Land Territory began to be clearly understood, the internal affairs also began to run in an orderly manner. After the first trade team to Tishan County, Yinchuan County and Lion County set off, Ryan finally waited for the guests from the Andorra Kingdom. Mihaly Fragoso, the daughter of the Viscount family of the Andorra Kingdom, has become more powerful in the past year. Miss Mihaly, it's been a long time since we last met. Ryan smiled and looked at Mihaly, who was welcomed in front of him, and then looked at the other side, a strange face covered in a golden cloak. Even if he was wearing a cloak, it was still a high-profile color like gold, as if he was afraid that others would not know his noble status. The status should be noble, because Mihaly was not as relaxed as before, and his expression was a little nervous. Besides, Ryan also heard the voice of Beard. This time they came with 100 guards, each of whom was very powerful, not inferior to Ryan's knight attendants. After seeing Ryan, the cloaked man also took off his cloak, revealing a blonde and blue-eyed face with a high nose bridge. "Who is this?" Ryan asked, without getting up from his chair. Just as Mahei was about to speak, the blonde man raised his hand to stop him, and then he spoke in person. "I am Roland McReynolds, meeting the Empire's frozen Earth Lord, Baron Ryan. His noble etiquette is very standard, the most meticulous one Ryan has ever seen, and the only one who can compare with him is Columbus III, who faced many nobles in the imperial capital. However, McReynolds, isn't this the name of the neighbor to the east, the owner of the Griffin Mountains in the Andorra Kingdom, the Grand Duke's family? You can't be the eldest son of the Griffin Grand Duke, right?" Ryan said helplessly. "If so, this problem would be too big." Roland smiled slightly and said, "Baron Ryan, don't worry, I am the second son of the McReynolds family." He was not depressed or jealous because he was not the eldest son. His voice was still as gentle as spring breeze, which made Mahei next to him couldn't help but look sideways frequently. "It's good that he is not the eldest son," Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. After all, for any noble, the eldest son is the natural spokesperson of the family because of his inheritance rights, and all his actions represent the decision of a family. If the eldest son of the Grand Duke came, Ryan would not want to receive him at all, especially if they met secretly. He would probably write to Earl Winter immediately and ask the governor of the North Wind province to deal with the trouble. Even as the eldest son of the Grand Duke of the Kingdom, Governor Winter would probably be in a mess. But the second son is much more convenient. Obviously, Roland McReynolds, who can imprint the etiquette of the nobility in his bones, is also clear about this. "I don't have a future title, nor am I a lord. I am just an ordinary person standing in front of Baron Ryan, Mr. Roland is joking. You have the blood of the Grand Duke of Griffin flowing in your body, and you are born noble," the two of them said politely. Roland couldn't help showing more kindness after hearing Ryan's words, and obviously agreed with Ryan's words. "So, Mr. Roland, you are from the Kingdom of Andorra. Do you have any unspeakable secrets in the Empire?" Ryan's expression became serious. "You know, even as a noble of the Empire, Ryan had to go to war to get the agreement of free trade. The vigilance and rejection between countries were much more serious than imagined. I am just an adventurer who likes to go to the north for adventure. I don't represent any noble, let alone the Andorra Kingdom to come to the Empire," Roland said easily, but Ryan knew it was not the case. He was very nervous. The deer spirit breathing method made Ryan feel that the other party's blood and ki fluctuations were not what they showed. Another thing is that even if the person in front of him entered the Empire, he could only come to the frozen territory and would not appear in other noble territories in the North Wind province. This is very telling. The frozen territory does belong to the north. But other places in the North Wind province, even the neighbor of the frozen territory, Baron Hatton's territory, is not considered to belong to the north. Adventure in the north is a topic that will never go out of date for the world in the south. In other words, even if he was caught and found, Roland's reason is still very fair. If he hadn't seen that the other party was always wearing a hat before seeing him, Ryan would have believed it. Right? After knocking on the table, all the servants around disappeared. Beard closed the door considerately, and only 3 nobles were left in the hall. "Sit down." At this time, there was no need for hypocrisy. Roland finally twisted the ring on his hand 180 degrees, and the majestic griffin carving was placed on the solid wood table that had been passed down for hundreds of years in the Furnace City. "I come here on behalf of myself and some friends who support me, but my father is also a father as a nobleman, and he also supports me as a child in the name of his father." Roland's every word will not leave any handle, and Ryan also nodded in admiration, recognizing the value of the ring. "As a father, I believe he is great," Roland continued. "I am an adventurer. Not long ago, I heard that a dragon appeared in the sky, and I have a dream, that is, to become a legendary dragon rider. I plan to hunt dragons, but I have no powerful weapons, so I came here to ask the master of the frozen land for help." Ryan nodded, agreeing very much. "Yes, if you want to hunt a dragon, you must have weapons." "Yes, I need very powerful weapons." "Then I wonder if the master of the frozen land has a legendary weapon that can kill a dragon and can lend it to Roland." Ryan shook his head and said, "I'm just a baron and a silver knight. How can I have a legendary weapon? Without a legendary weapon, it will be difficult to hunt a dragon. We can't even break the dragon's hard skin. Maybe, If we have enough weapons, we can still try. Roland finally looked at Ryan seriously. I'm just an adventurer, and I don't deserve legendary weapons. I wonder if the Lord of the Frozen Land can provide me with enough weapons that can break the dragon scales. Ryan frowned. It will cost a lot of money. Dragons represent wealth, so if you want to kill a dragon, you need to pay a lot of wealth in advance. Roland laughed. My friends and my father have given me enough money. They all support me in hunting dragons and bringing the glory of Dragon Knights to the family. Ryan also laughed. Chapter 214 Weapon Level. Mihaly Fragoso. To be precise, it was the Viscount Fragoso family. When Roland and Ryan discussed the sale of weapons, they always used the name of the Viscount Fragoso family. On Mihaly's hand, the noble emblem of the Viscount Fragoso family also appeared. It was a ring originally worn on the Viscount's hand. The magic ring was of high quality. Ryan felt the gaze of Master Lunar looking at him, which already showed that the ring itself was a powerful magic tool. Mr. Fragoso was also a noble who once dreamed of becoming a dragon knight, but the responsibility and inheritance of the family forced him to withdraw from the ranks of adventurers. But he is also my father's biggest supporter, Roland McReynolds said with a smile. Ryan felt that the princes of the imperial family were almost like this. Born high-ranking people, every move they make, they look down on mortals. When the gods do not appear, they are gods walking on earth. Ryan put away his laughter and his expression became extremely solemn. Now he no longer has the mind to play any language art with Roland. He felt as if he had underestimated the nobles like Andor who were surrounding Grand Duke McReynolds, as well as the Grand Duke himself. Their needs were not simple. How many weapons do you need? Tell me a number based on the price I gave Miss Mihaly last year. Roland stared at Ryan, seemingly not used to Ryan's sudden change, but this was the Empire after all. He and Mihaly looked at each other, and then Roland raised a finger. He said a number that almost made Ryan fall off his chair. 1,000,000 gold punks, 1,000,000 gold coins. Ryan's eyes widened. Even though he had experienced several wars, he was a little out of control at this moment. What kind of rubbish were the weapons he gave to Mihaly? There was no shortage of iron ore in the North Wind province, so even among the civilians there were people who secretly mine ore, but their methods were not good, so the weapons they forged were very weak. So weak that Ryan could break the long sword with a wooden beast bow. After the war, Ryan gave the confiscated weapons to Mihaj and earned a lot of gold coins. Other nobles in Lingdu County also benefited from it. After all, those weapons did not belong to Ryan alone. But it seems that these weapons are still popular with the Kingdom of Andorra. They are even willing to pay 1,000,000 gold coins to continue to buy them. This is too much? Those nobles in the Kingdom of Andorra need so many weapons? Grand Duke McReynolds needs so many weapons? Is he going to rebel? Ahem. Ryan coughed strategically. No matter what, he could not refuse the trade flow of 1,000,000 gold coins. If he refused, his conscience would definitely be condemned. Bird, he roared, and soon, Beard pushed open the door and came in, holding two night swords in his hands. One of the Snow Dragon Song series forged by Brock himself. This is a collection, and it is also the second sword in the entire series. As for the first sword, it has not been forged yet. The north is always short of snow dragons. Whenever the breath of the gods turns into a gust of wind that sweeps across the winter-covered north, the snow dragons will roar. The scene of the earth breaking apart is called an avalanche. Ryan drew out his knight's sword, and the extremely cold light instantly brought a deep chill to Mihaly and Roland. As Ryan's cold and surging words were like gusts of wind, they seemed to see the peaks of the clear background ice and snow world in front of their eyes. Suddenly, snowflakes fell, and then the overwhelming ice and snow rolled down from the peaks, turning into snow dragons roaring above the world. Mihaly's blood was subconsciously surging, and Roland's face was a little pale. After a long time, the two reacted and stared blankly at the Snow Dragon Song in Ryan's hand. This is the craftsmanship of my frozen land. If you two don't believe it, then I, Ryan, can tell you that in the entire empire, there are no more than 5 noble families who can forge such a knight's long sword at this level, Ryan said confidently. In fact, he wanted to say that there was no other family, but it was too unreliable to say so. As a knight, mounts, weapons, and armor are the 3 indispensable elements, and a good mount can accompany a knight throughout his life. A good armor can bring protection comparable to that of a god, and as for a good knight's long sword, Ryan's words have not been finished yet. Mihaly has taken over the words. A good knight's longsword is the best partner of the knight. It can help a knight practice the faith of a knight, and even help a knight comprehend a higher level of transcendence, turning the impossible into the possible. A person whose talent can only be trained to the level of a formal knight has a powerful weapon, and he has the opportunity to break through the bronze knight. If a knight wants to surpass the golden knight and fly out of the earth to become a member of the sky, he must have a powerful and perfect knight's longsword. On the knight's longsword in Ryan's hand, Mihaly saw the hope of the knight's promotion to the sky. Just like an apprentice knight without a life seed can never become a formal knight, such a longsword is the seed of becoming a sky knight for any knight. It is a seed and also hope. The knight carries this knight's longsword day and night, allowing the longsword to fit his aura, and then feeding back to help the knight practice and exercise. Mihaly did not feel any extra impurities on this longsword, that is, it is clean. Thinking of this, her eyes could not help but become hot. This is a top-notch earth-level knight's longsword. Mihaly's words finally made Roland, who was not a knight, understand the value of this sword. Compared with the complexity and diversity of other extraordinary systems, knights are very simple and crude. For example, the weapons they use only have a few levels. Earth level, sky level, sanctuary level, legendary level. Especially at the earth level, from the unsharpened ironwood sword used for training to the snow dragon song in Ryan's hand that the Golden Knight was jealous of, they are all at the earth level. Because in the Knight Extraordinary system, from the Apprentice Knight to the Golden Knight, this long gap in Knight levels is collectively referred to as the Earth Knight. After all, even as a Golden Knight, as long as you have not become a Sky Knight, you cannot fly, not even a short flight jump, and can only fight on the ground. This also shows that the difference in weapons is actually difficult to distinguish. However, Roland is very clear about the value difference between an ordinary person and a Golden Knight, so he immediately understood the value of the knight's long sword in Ryan's hand. Chapter 215 Stories and Values. Roland was thinking about value, while Ryan was telling stories. The blacksmith, who was blessed by the gods, pondered for 3 months in the blacksmith shop left by the legendary craftsman. Finally, the blacksmith went deep into the northern border for thousands of miles and saw the great snow mountain that would never melt. He tried to understand something, however, it was not until he climbed to the top of the snow-capped mountain that he realized that the great snow mountain he was chasing was not the highest peak. He stood on the top of the great snow mountain and looked towards the north. He saw mountains that could not even be covered by the sea of clouds. On those mountains, there were also ice and snow that would not melt. The will of winter has made there are higher snow-capped mountains beyond the snow-capped mountains, so after sitting all night, when dawn came and the light of the Lord of Dawn fell on the first snowflake, the blacksmith roared. At that moment, the white snow on the great snow mountain under his feet, which never melted all year round, roared like a dragon. It was an avalanche, and the avalanche on the great snow mountain was the most desperate. The blacksmith was wrapped in endless ice and snow. He was submerged in the wind and snow and rolled down the great snow mountain with the avalanche. It took him 3 days and 3 nights to climb the great snow mountain, but it only took him 3 minutes to roll down. But the morning light favored him, and he did not die. When he looked up from the world of snow, he saw the eternal great snow mountain. After the avalanche, it was as green as the mountains in the southern world. Under the snow that originally covered the great snow mountain, there was a green world, which was the place of vitality left by the gods. After returning, the blacksmith worked for 10 days and 10 nights without sleep and forged the snow dragon song. This is the vitality of the north, the dragon song of the world, and the power that is full of vitality even when everything is destroyed under the avalanche. Listening to the story from Ryan's mouth, Mihaly's eyes were full of light, and she believed it. This is a knight's long sword that has the opportunity to become a legendary weapon, Mihaly commented. Stories and carriers are always inseparable. Ryan put down the not-for-sale item that Mihaly was obsessed with in his hand and picked up another ordinary knight's long sword. This one is very ordinary. It is a long sword of a bronze knight that will break in 1 or 2 years if it is not repaired forever. But for a noble like Andor who can accept even the garbage from last year, this longsword is still considered excellent. Snow Dragon Song is a unique forging process in the frozen land. Only that master can forge it. Each sword can accompany the knight from the earth to the sky. This weapon also comes from more blacksmiths in the frozen land. They follow the master, so their skills are also stained with the favor of the gods. Ryan didn't care what the facts were. In short, everything was said in a lofty way. Roland and Mihaly's eyes lit up when they heard it. The frozen land does not sell defective products. Every weapon produced in the frozen land is at least this strong. Ryan put down the knight's longsword in his hand. And each of the high-end weapons in the frozen land territory is no less than the Snow Dragon Song. The names are their uniqueness, representing the will of the vast northern border, Ryan said bluntly. Roland's biggest problem was that he exposed the fact that they had a lot of money and were a big fat sheep at the beginning. He must have never traded with those pure businessmen, but that's right. The family of the Grand Duke is the businessmen themselves. No matter what kind of transaction, they will benefit. How can we maximize the profit of this transaction? It's not about passing off inferior goods as good ones, piling up the quantity on the scale until it is equal to 1 million gold coins. It's about quality, extraordinary quality, using less quantity to equal the weight of 1 million gold coins. How to increase quality? The materials used in weapons and the cost of transportation are all part of quality. Similarly, the stories that Ryan said would be sung with a longsword are also part of quality. A table, no matter how good the materials are, will not have much value in a farmer's home, but if it is placed in the imperial palace, and the emperor reviews memorials on it every day, then the quality of the table will be improved by many grades. Stories, wine, and trade are the focus of Ryan's economic development. The main component is the people of Exner, who use their talent to become bards to sing the products of the frozen land, add value to the goods, and bring Ryan more wealth. Compared with such means, the chambers of commerce in the empire are too simple. The first person to eat crabs may have diarrhea, or he may eat a lot, but Ryan is sure that he will be the second. Because such means are destined to succeed economically, and in addition, his frozen land also has a strong military force. He is the boss of Lindu County, he is the military commander of the Northwind Province, and he is the heir of the Clayton family. He is also a powerful knight. The frozen land can't eat all the gold coins. If it were Mihaly, he might be confused, but Roland was relatively sober. He was impressed by the power of the empire, but he also understood that Ryan was just a baron who was a little too powerful. Of course, Mr. Roland, Ryan smiled and looked at him. But the 1 million gold coins that support you don't all come from your father, right? The tundra territory can't take all the 1 million gold coins, can't it still meet the weapons needs of the McReynolds family? Roland's eyes widened at this moment. If the soldiers of the McReynolds family all use such powerful weapons, it will indeed improve their military strength to a higher level. Today, the Grand Duke's family only has military strength. Mihaly next to him knocked on the table with some dissatisfaction. Of course, if the Fragoso family needs it, the tundra territory can also meet it. I believe Miss Mihaly has also seen that the tundra territory is very large and has a large population of labor, Ryan said with a smile. There is no difference in each of the 1 million gold coins, that is the ratio of weight and quality, but among the 1 million weapons, the weapons from the tundra territory will definitely be different from those produced by other nobles. Since the people who came are Fragoso and McReynolds, the better quality and more powerful tundra territory weapons should of course be supplied to these two families first. In this way, Ryan also opened up the trade route to the west of the Andorra Kingdom. After the deal was completely signed on paper, all three parties were very satisfied. For this reason, Ryan generously gave the two nobles 2 knight swords of the Snow Dragon Song series. This name has an unbeaten reputation in the Thousand Lakes province in the south. I hope you can make its glory last forever. Chapter 216 Theocracy and Royal Power? Snow Dragon Song series of knight swords should not have been delivered to the knights on the southern battlefield yet, but this does not prevent him from talking about it first. It is too slow to prove the facts with the results, so Ryan used the facts to prove the appearance of the results first. It can be seen that Miss Mihaly was very useful and hugged the knight sword tightly, and Roland also put it away solemnly. Maybe he will give it to a powerful follower, or maybe put it in his collection. In any case, Ryan is successful, because Brock can forge several of these swords a day. Originally, he could only forge 1 sword a day, but although Brock was a stubborn blacksmith, to some extent, he would still listen to the opinions of Ryan, a nobleman with the means of divine blessing. For example, Ryan suggested that he simplify the ordinary knight swords like Snow Dragon Song and forge them in an assembly line mode. Of course, Brock argued with reason, blushed and scolded Ryan's method, thinking that it was a blasphemy against weapons and skills. But at the same time, he began to reflect, because Ryan's ideas gave him a lot of inspiration. So it became that Brock would often hammer and forge a lot of weapon embryos every day. When the embryos were hammered and forged, they were not carried out to the next step but sealed in ice water, and classified according to the quality changes caused by the errors during hammering. He forged a lot of snow dragon song embryos, and when the weather was good one day and the condition was better, he would take out those embryos for the next step of deep forging. This would save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. After all, there were still many steps for a weapon to go from pig iron to wrought iron, to molten iron to the final finished bladed weapon. Every time, the temperature, size, and coldness of the ice water cooling had to be adjusted many times. Brock believed that a powerful and complete weapon must be a continuous and complete process, otherwise the forged weapon would not be powerful enough, and Ryan also believed so. But he also believed that most ordinary weapons were limited by many conditions, so there was no possibility of being powerful at all, and naturally there was no need for one-time forging, and if there was a little non-human error in a certain step, it would also fail. Brock also believed so the original one weapon a day became several weapons a day now. Such a change made Ryan feel that Brock could really forge legendary weapons. According to him, an old-fashioned blacksmith who didn't know how to adapt had no future. Brock agreed very much, and then ran to the wild world to help Master McKen knock the horse's hooves. Ryan was speechless about this result. Miss Miholy's wish to meet the master who climbed the Great Snow Mountain was also unsuccessful. She wanted to stay in the North Wind province, but Roland had more concerns. The appearance of the nobles of the kingdom in the empire was a shameful thing, so he had to go back quickly. It was naturally impossible to give Ryan 1 million gold coins directly, but a part of the deposit was given first, that is, 100,000 gold coins. At the same time, a large number of weapons were taken away. They were Ryan's spoils of war. The weapons full of traces of war disappeared in the huge carriage brought by Roland and Ryan's wide eyes. Space magic equipment. Ryan was really surprised at McReynolds' wealth. But it was also in this scene that he felt the determination of the McReynolds family to keep it absolutely secret at all costs. It was obviously a waste of talent to use such a space magic device to transport weapons, but they did it anyway, which meant that if it was exposed, it would be more serious than this incident. If I had known this, I should have asked for some hush money. Does Roland really believe in the integrity of my nobles? Ryan shook his head. Compared with many nobles, Roland's performance was definitely not sophisticated enough. I don't know if it was because the important figures of the Grand Duke McReynolds family were being watched, or if they wanted to train this second son that caused the change. It was normal for Roland to be immature. As a noble, the most important thing was to train his heir, that is, the eldest son. For other children, they would definitely not take the initiative to train them, otherwise there would be problems. Especially the second son. At present, Ryan has only seen the youngest son of Viscount Miles, who had an unusual training. In addition, there was Earl Weiss who tried to rule the entire North Wind province. Thinking of Earl Weiss, and then thinking about the current Roland and the Grand Duke McReynolds family, Ryan suddenly took a breath. I can't think about it any further. Since the Pan-Plane War of Guts, it's not that there haven't been nobles who have been promoted to high nobles or even established kingdoms, but there has never been a case of the royal family within any kingdom being overthrown and replaced by a great noble. There are too many isolations between the nobles of this world and this era. The only possibility is that the royal family weakens, and then the great nobles no longer pledge allegiance to the royal family, start a new business, and establish a kingdom. Even so, the royal family of the kingdom he once pledged allegiance to will not be destroyed. Even if they are already very weak, they still have the qualifications of a strong bloodline to rule orthodoxly. This is somewhat like the so-called constitutional monarchy in another part of Ryan's memory. If the original constitutional monarchy was based on the fact that the royal family still had power and wealth, it would have been a constitutional monarchy, and no matter how stupid the parliament was, it could deprive the royal family of everything in a long time. But it has never happened. The inheritance and continuation of the nobles has never experienced the historical note of the Xianji trampling on the bones of the nobles, which has led to the royal family always being the mascot of the parliament. Their legitimacy has always been recognized and authoritative. That world is like this, let alone this world. No matter how weak the nobles in this world are, they will not be without extraordinary powers, and then there are gods. According to the previous communication with those nobles, in the war between the Empire and the Church, the Carlos kingdom that charged forward was originally a Grand Duke in another kingdom who was loyal to the royal family. As a result, after the pan-dimensional war of the gods, The royal family declined, but the Carlos family rose and became powerful in the war. In the end, the Carlos family chose to end their loyalty to the royal family, gave up all their lands, and laid down the current Carlos kingdom. The means of the church are indispensable. Because the Carlos kingdom is a vicious dog under the hands of the church. When thinking of this family, Ryan couldn't help but think more. For example, the Holy Heavenly Knights, such as the Feathered Dragon Legion of the church, they are all in the northeast of the empire. Now it seems that the exact location is in the territory of the Andorra Kingdom, to the east of the empire. No way Archduke McReynolds has the support of the church behind him? Just like the kingdom of Carlos used to be? Ryan had a headache. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 Appia. As a noble, Ryan had sufficient political vigilance. So when he thought of this possibility, he couldn't help but want to expose the matter. Why? Because his strength is not enough at present. What if his words really come true? Wouldn't he be subsidizing the church? At that time, the church will drag Clayton and more nobles into the water in order to make the empire chaotic, and will expose the role Ryan played in this process. At that time, Ryan will jump into the Yellow River and can't explain it. No, we have to find out clearly, Ryan finally reacted. This transaction of 1 million gold coins is an extension of the political struggle. In this case, it can't be regarded as a pure business behavior. He must know more. Let Brand come to me. After Ryan gave the order, he came to the dark cave at the foot of the north side of the Rhinoceros Horn Mountain. This is a prison. Ryan's original intention of building it was to reduce crime and labor reform in the territory, but the first batch of prisoners held there were not humans. In the previous war, these nobles divided the benefits of the war cleanly with a few words. A few words from their mouths could determine the fate of thousands of people. Among them were the Cat People. To be precise, it was a group of Cat People tribes and assassins in the Cat People tribes. The leader of the Cat People assassins also fell into Ryan's hands. Count Winter and his people had no need for the leader, because even if they were to be trained, they would have to train their own slaves, not the Cat People assassin leader who was loyal to Count Weiss. The dark dungeon was purely because the sun could not shine. There was no such thing as dampness in the caves in the north. The frozen moisture actually kept it quite warm. This was the warmest place in the entire frozen land. But outside was the military camp, and this dungeon became a place that could never be escaped, and many people were terrified when talking about it. Appia, as the leader of the Cat People assassins, Appia was happy to get a single room. When he heard someone calling his name, the Cat People assassin who was sitting cross-legged on the hay raised his head. The first thing he saw was a tall figure. He was wearing heavy armor, which blocked the weak light, but as a Cat People assassin, Appia could still clearly see the other person's young appearance in the dark. This was a human youth, but he was very powerful. Beyond this mighty human like a mountain, Appia saw the gorgeous and distinguished young man standing behind him. He knew him for a simple reason. Baron Ryan was the first and only failed assassination attempt by the Catman assassin. The other party was a little far away from him. Even with the Knight's Guard and the fence blocking him, he was still far away from him. Very alert, Appia felt that his life would end today. They overestimated the Catman assassin. Without advanced preparations for concealment and breathing techniques, the Catman assassin could not even beat ordinary soldiers. All their strength burst out the moment they left the shadows. Leader of the Cat tribe, more than 100 years ago, your ancestors followed the guidance of divine power and traveled to another dimension, but in that world, you cannot survive, because everything in that world is huge. Even a deer is 5 or 6 times the size of your body. As a result, the fighting style of the cat assassins is unable to kill such powerful creatures. Their vitality is enough for them to withstand the rapiers of the cat assassins many times and escape, but more often than not, the mad beasts can kick the exposed assassins to death with one kick, and your bodies are too weak. So, over the past 100 years, the number of the cat tribe has become smaller and smaller. If the army of Count Weiss had not appeared to let you see the possibility of leaving that world by swearing allegiance, your tribe would have perished in 20 years at most. A safe shelter and a stable food source are what you lack most. Ryan easily told all the past and hidden dangers of the cat tribe. Appia was silent. He didn't know what the other party was going to say. The nobles can provide these things, but the premise is your loyalty. I think when you first met the army of Count Weiss, there were frictions and conflicts between you. I have to say that after so many assassinations, the cat assassins have made the nobles of the Northern Wind Province see your value. This is why you are still alive until now. Ryan slowly approached Appia. The lifespan of cat people is not as long as that of humans. Appia in front of him is also middle-aged among cat people. I need your strength, and I can give you everything you want. You can also try to run back to the north, but I remember that the tribes of orcs are often more cruel than the human world. The weak cat people are only worthy of being slaves. If you agree, you 225 cat people can survive. I will give you a lot of things, including your life. To Ryan's surprise, the cat leader in front of him did not have any backbone. Maybe he was in prison for too long? Or maybe they were not so opposed to being loyal to someone. Appia looked at Ryan and knelt down. His voice was not deep, but a little sharp. Appia pledges allegiance to you. 5 minutes later, more than 200 catmen, men, women, and children were now released. Catmen assassins like dark environments, but ordinary catmen orcs prefer sunlight. When the long-lost vastness above their heads shone down, even though there were a large number of soldiers staring at them, these catmen couldn't help but stretch their bodies subconsciously. As if they had no bones, they were only 1 meter tall, but when they stretched fully, they looked like a tall, thin man. This is also a rare species that does not have absolute reproductive isolation from humans. Otherwise, how did those cat women loved by the nobles come from? Harrington took the remaining 195 catmen to where they should go, and the remaining 30 catmen stood in front of Ryan at this moment. Compared with other catmen, these assassins are like knights among humans. They train themselves, and gradually draw the power of shadows to become extraordinary, becoming feared assassins. After accepting the loyalty of all catmen assassins, Ryan asked Brand to prepare a camp for them. In the future, these catmen assassins will also be his warriors. As for Appia, he followed Ryan and stood relatively far away, 3 meters apart. Ryan was always on guard against him. Cat people don't have any chivalry. Ryan would not be careless at the beginning. Is it possible for humans to practice your breathing techniques and become extraordinary? He asked. This was also the most curious. If it was possible, then the value of cat assassins would be reduced again. No. This is a supernatural system unique to cat people. Earl Weiss also tried before, using the method of that alchemist to forcibly create a human assassin who could hide in the shadow, but failed. No human can completely enter the shadow. They can only enter some limbs, and they will soon be devoured by the shadow and die. Ryan nodded. In this case, he was too lazy to try. Can you read and write? Ryan suddenly asked, which made Appia stunned, looking at Ryan a little confused. No, cat people have never received education. I will arrange for someone to teach you during this period. For 1 month, you'd better be able to use your talents that can make you extraordinary to study. After 1 month, you will follow a team to the Andorra Kingdom to carry out a mission. Chapter 218 1 meters perspective. Appia thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out what missions required assassins like them to use knowledge to carry out. In the past, they only needed to assassinate the target. Sitting in front of the stone window sill, as the leader of the cat people, his residence was very gorgeous. It was one of the stone houses at the foot of the Rhino Horn Mountain. Those who could live here were all lords with status in the frozen land. From the window, you can look up at the Lord's Castle on the Rhino Horn Mountain, which has been decorated with more and more rich Rhino Horn Mountain recently. Being able to learn knowledge is a good thing for the cat tribe, so Appia did not refuse, and he was not qualified to refuse. He still agreed to go with the flow, and then he got the reward of this stone house. According to Baron Ryan's words, you should trust people when you employ them. Since you have accepted their loyalty, you will not doubt it. He went to see the cat people of the tribe. They lived on the south side of a mountain peak. There were many houses built there. They were originally used for farmers, but now they have become houses for cat people, allowing them to look after the terraced fields on the mountain and plant and cultivate some herbs. Cat people are very good at these things. Before there was a supernatural system like the cat assassin, cat people were doctors for many orc tribes. This was their only value. Appia also felt strange. He was loyal to an earl before, and now he is loyal to a baron. The difference in titles is huge, but the treatment of cat people is many times better. He was idle all of a sudden. He put on a hood to cover his body and head. There was a wooden sign on his waist. The sign was engraved with the mark of Rhino Horn Mountain. It was a badge and also represented his identity. Appia walked in the town of the frozen land. He had seen cities and towns, but it was difficult to tell whether the land he was walking on was a city or a town. It was larger than a town, but it seemed that it was not as comprehensive as a city, but it was much cleaner than a city. Well, clean, this was Appia's first feeling. His body, which was only 1 meter tall, allowed him to see the ground under his feet more clearly than humans. There was no garbage except for a little dust. For the cold northern region, there was not much dust, so the clean streets were very comfortable. The streets he walked on were not the main roads in the frozen land, where there were many people. He was born not to like places with so many people, so he could not see the bustling shops and the human children running on the streets. On both sides of the ground under his feet were residential houses. Through the not-so-rigorous door cracks, he could see the human women living there weaving, mending, washing, feeding livestock, and cleaning. It was a very simple life, but Appia was envious. He also knew that the men of these women were busy outside at the moment. There didn't seem to be many terraced lands in the frozen land, but Baron Ryan had come up with a lot of work that required ordinary people to sell their labor. He gradually came to a famous street in the frozen land, which was said to be called Exner Street. There were many carpenters living here. They had superb skills. How superb were they? In Appia's opinion, these carpenters were arguing with others while telling stories to the little guy next to them, but they were still making wooden tools. The shovels sent from the blacksmith street were tied tightly by these carpenters in a few seconds, and then the little guy next to them excitedly took a broom to sweep the sawdust on the ground. The quarrel continued. Appia saw that the one who was arguing was a street manager. The other party was wearing standard clothes and represented the political officer of the street. There were 2 people standing next to him, wearing similar clothes, representing the judge and the guard of the street. Every street in the frozen land will have 3 such officials who are loyal to the Lord. Each official has more than a dozen runners under his command, and the guard has more. The managers of these streets assist the higher masters in managing the streets, and it is said that there are rewards. Many times ordinary people, especially the slaves in the slums, dare not speak loudly to these people. But it was different here. This was Exner Street. All the carpenters in the territory gathered here. They were a great force. The best carpenters could even communicate directly with Atria, the governor of the frozen land. The government officials had to look at their faces. Appia was a little confused when hearing the quarrel. It seemed that these managers asked the carpenters to hurry up and make some large objects to be transported to the mountain to build something. But the carpenters retorted that the tools needed in the territory were requested by the Lord himself. How could they not finish these things and do other things? Finally, the person representing the judge made a decision. The things on the mountain have the highest priority. The Lord must see the results within a month, otherwise the next carpentry work will reduce the allocation of these carpenters. The carpenters were defeated. The construction of the watchtower on the mountain was the work of the Lord to draw carpenters. In addition to ensuring food, there was no extra reward, but they could make a profit from ordinary carpentry work. Especially recently, another group of people called traders came, saying that they wanted the exquisite craft crops in their hands and would give them some copper coins. This would undoubtedly increase some income, but there was no way. Although the carpenter dared to argue with these people, he didn't dare to really refuse. After watching the excitement, Appia left here like everyone else. Carpenter Street was full of the smell of sawdust, while Blacksmith Street was filled with fierce and ear-straining knocking. This is the warmest place in the entire frozen land. Many people like to come here, which led to the sheriff blocking the street and limiting the flow of people in and out. Compared with the quarrels over the carpenters, there were no more trivialities here except the sound of hammers and flames. First, because blacksmiths are all blacksmiths, they are all very strong, stronger than those sheriffs. Another thing is that the entire Blacksmith Street is done according to the will of Lord Ryan and the chief craftsman. Those political officials must consider the views of the Lord and the attitude of the master craftsman when they want to do anything. The Lord is too far away and they can't contact him, but if the master craftsman is not polite to them, no one can help them. So Blacksmith Street is full of joy. Appia walked to the largest blacksmith shop. It was very quiet here, including outside the blacksmith shop. No one stayed there because they couldn't afford the things here. Master Brock, Master Ryan said you're back and asked me to ask you for a batch of goods. Brock picked up Appia and the bearded man said, are you the new Catman recruited by the Lord? Chapter 219, Wheat Seedlings and Mission. Standing in front of Brock, Appia was as weak as a little chicken. He even doubted that even if he was fully prepared for the extraordinary assassination, he would not be the opponent of the strong man in front of him. He was very strong, a strong warrior, not weaker than that brand. Appia thought so, and then he felt himself being put down and placed on the blacksmith's table. The soles of his feet were very hot. There was the only blacksmith's table that used extraordinary materials for flame control. What do you want? Rapiers? I heard that this is your weapon. Appia took off his hood and placed a cloak in front of Brock. We need rapiers, about 70 centimeters long, a total of 30. We also need a hood and a really useful cloak, Appia said while looking at his cloak. This cloak had no special function, similar to clothes. Cape, this thing is not what I am good at. The cloak needs to be woven, Brock said, and then shouted towards the inside of the house. Just soon, a young man walked out from the other side of the curtain. Appia sensed the fluctuation of magic power. This was a magician. Among humans, this age is already a magician, and it is already a genius picked from thousands of people. At this moment, he seems to be in a depressed expression in the blacksmith's shop, as if the treatment is not very good. You are responsible for weaving this little thing's cloak. Got it, Master Brock? Jelst had no desire to refute. As a member of the mages who followed a great magician Maken to the frozen land, he thought he would get huge financial support and a noble status here. As a result, after repeated failures, Baron Ryan suggested that he come to the blacksmith shop and use wind magic to assist in controlling the furnaces of most of the street. Only the noble mages of wind magic would consider it. It is not his main magic practice. His main practice is still the life magic side. He is good at infinitely refining life spells. As a result, it becomes more and more crooked, and finally becomes a weaver. Jelst, who doesn't know what he is useful for, can only realize his value by waiting for Ryan's orders and find a way to repay the high debt. Watching Jelst leave, Brock retracted his gaze. He knew that Baron Ryan still valued this magician very much, but he didn't know what Ryan wanted to turn Jelst into. Serving as a blower in the blacksmith shop was just a test for Jelst. But Brock didn't care about these things. Since they were sent to him, he would use Jelst as the best blower. Bang! A hammer hit the iron ore, and Brock was worried and a little angry. Recently, Lord Baron Ryan wanted to make a boiler to smelt iron. Can the iron smelted in that way have a soul? Can it be strong? Appia didn't know what Brock was thinking, but as an assassin, he sensed the powerful blacksmith in front of him. 15 days later, Appia met Ryan on a mountain. Standing on the top of the mountain, looking at the wheat seedlings growing on the surrounding terraces, Ryan was very satisfied. Master Yelena, your achievements in life magic are amazing, Ryan praised generously, and Yelena beside him couldn't help but jump for joy. Nothing represents wealth more than the praise of the loyal lord. Sure enough, Ryan continued, in the next 6 months, I will give Master Yelena 50,000 gold coins. I hope that next spring, I can see that no more than 10% of the wheat seedlings on these terraces will die. Ryan was in a good mood. Sure enough, the noble's vision was right. Only by using magicians as scientific researchers can magic be used to the greatest extent in this world. Can a magician who flies around and kills and destroys the army be compared to a magician who can increase the yield per mu by 50%? Absolutely not. The value of creation is always greater than the value of destruction. These civilian magicians are definitely legendary weapons when used in scientific research. Ryan couldn't help but take another look at the wheat seedlings that still didn't die in the cold wind, and forced himself to calm down. He sensed Appia's arrival, so he turned his head and looked at the assassin wearing a brand new shadow cloak. If Appia hadn't deliberately made a noise, he probably wouldn't have noticed that the other party had walked 3 meters behind him. The extraordinary path of the Catman assassin is enviable, Ryan thought, and then said, in 2 days, a team will be sent from the frozen land to transport a batch of supplies to the Andorra Kingdom in the east. I want you and your men to hide in it and enter the Andorra Kingdom. Don't worry, we won't go through the checkpoints and fortresses, and you won't be discovered. After entering the Andorra Kingdom, you will lurk near the nobles on the list I gave you, write down what you see and hear, and then bring it back. Appia took the note handed over by Ryan, which had the names of more than a dozen nobles on it. At this time, he finally understood why Ryan wanted them, the Catman assassins, to learn to read and write. With only half a month, they may not be able to do it very well, Apia said truthfully. In fact, even he himself could not write many words. It's okay, you can still learn on the way, and Edward will be in the team, Apia nodded. Edward was the teacher who taught them to read and write in the past half-month. He was also a trade officer under Baron Ryan, a handsome young man. Unexpectedly, the other party actually got the recognition and trust of Baron Ryan. He always thought that only those who did not do well in the frozen land would be assigned to teach them these cat people knowledge. Don't we have to do anything? Apia asked hesitantly. In his opinion, Ryan's request was a little too easy. How did Count Weiss use the cat people assassins in the past? Let them assassinate the nobles who were heavily guarded, and let them kill the knights who embarked on the extraordinary path at all costs on the battlefield. Every mission was an assassination with a 100% chance of death, especially on the battlefield. As long as the sword was stabbed, whether it was successful or not, the cat people assassins would definitely not survive. The charge and trampling of human soldiers could trample the exposed cat people assassins into meat paste. In contrast, Ryan just wanted them to hide in the dark and listen to what others said. For the Catman assassin, this was not dangerous at all. No, I'll tell you when I need you to do something. Ryan waved his hand and asked Apia to find Edward by himself. In half a month, Apia was already very familiar with the frozen land. Whether he could find Edward was also a test of whether the Catman assassin had the ability to find people. Chapter 220 Shocket's Shock. The Melendez family came to the frozen territory again. Shocket Melendez, the younger brother of Viscount Melendez, came to the frozen territory for the second time with a large team of carriages, giving Ryan a huge surprise. Ha, Ryan, these grains were arranged by the Viscount himself and asked me to send them to you. As the uncle of Ryan's fiancée, Shocket would naturally get closer to Ryan as the two families got closer, otherwise he would call Ryan Baron at this moment. He was showing goodwill, because until now, the scale of the frozen territory still shocked the knight. And after a few months, it seemed that the frozen territory was more prosperous. Shocket could feel that the frozen territory was very lively, and many people were running around in the streets, transporting some supplies and gathering somewhere. Mr. Shocket, Ryan smiled, somewhat glad that Apia and Edward had already transported weapons to the kingdom of Andorra yesterday, otherwise it would be difficult to explain if they were seen today. After seeing the grain from Melendez, Ryan was also surprised that his father-in-law was supporting him more and more. Shocket said that what was delivered was food, but as he walked with Ryan, the knight added in a low voice. In addition to food, the Viscount also sent a batch of magic potion seeds, which are all very suitable for growing in the cold north. There are also potion formulas to match these potions. If you have suitable magicians under your command, Ryan, you can use these potions to form an industry in the frozen territory. Once you have a mature system, the frozen territory will have another way to generate wealth. At that time, the Melendez family can help you sell magic potions to the West Coast. The prosperity of the West Coast will shock you. There are countless rich people there. Even ordinary people can grit their teeth and afford magic potions to temper their bodies or spirits. Ryan was indeed a little shocked. This means that Melendez, in addition to not finding a few magicians for Ryan, almost brought the entire production line. According to the Viscount, after these magic potions become a system, it is normal for the frozen territory to increase its income by 2,000 to 3,000 gold coins each year. Ryan expressed his gratitude and shock, and then invited Shocket to enter the castle. In order to prevent him from seeing too much, the next day, Shocket expressed his desire to see Ryan's army. This was his personal opinion. Ryan's frozen territory was very large and had a large population, so the army was a very important part. With enough power, the frozen territory would be very stable. In his opinion, the current frozen territory was too lively, which meant that it was not stable enough. Then, amid the roar of the military camp, Shocket looked at Brand's opposite with a serious expression, and then clenched the knight's sword with both hands. After repeated charges and fights, Shocket no longer instructed Ryan. A strong army and knights guarantee the rule of the territory, but the productivity of the land requires excellent management conditions. Shocket said this. As the younger brother of the Viscount, he not only controlled the army of the Viscount's territory, but also followed the Viscount to see many management methods. So, he looked at the clean streets and the scene outside the town where dozens of serfs followed the call excitedly to the terraced fields, and fell into silence again. What about the head of the village? What about collective responsibility? What about supervision? What about income generation? I don't understand. In the end, Shawkett said nothing and took his people to the north, where a 12-meter-high watchtower was being built. Bullock personally supervised the construction, and more than half of the people who built the watchtower were knights, and they were even the main force, and the rest were slaves who could only help. When the huge bed crossbow was brought up by 6 official knights panting, even Shawkett couldn't help but step back a few steps. He felt a fatal threat from the giant crossbow. "Are you going to hunt dragons?" Shawkett couldn't help asking with a tingling scalp. He heard Ryan say that the people in the north were simple, but was it really that simple? Only in the various fortresses of the Empire would there be such terrible equipment, and how was it forged in the frozen land? Brock glanced at Shawkett, snorted and said, "Can such a small thing hunt a dragon? Unless the dragon is willing to play along and put the crossbow arrow under its armpit." Brock was not polite to anyone except Ryan and Etria, and could only introduce Butler Beard, who followed Shawkett. "Knight Shawkett, these giant crossbows are used to fight against the monsters in the north. Every year, many monsters break into the master's territory. If there are these giant crossbows, the safety of the watchtower and the hunters who go into the mountains to hunt can be guaranteed." Shawkett took a deep breath. The name of the watchtower is too misleading. With such a powerful weapon, it is no problem to call it a fortress. "Are there many monsters in the north?" Shawkett finally said dryly, and he regretted it right after he finished speaking. "The land in the south is occupied by humans. If the monsters are not on the north, where are they?" "A lot. Every year we can hunt monsters. Among the gifts that Master Ryan gave you, there is a magic crystal of a demon snake and a cloak made of mountain eagle feathers. Those are all second-level monster materials." Shawkett blinked. He had never opened the gift before. He didn't expect it to be so precious. In the territory of Viscount Melendez, it is not certain that one second-level monster can be hunted in a year. After all, they only live by the river, not like the Clayton family, who have the entire mountain range as a hunting ground. There are not many monsters on the ground, and the monsters in the river are more like hunters, which naturally leads to the scarcity of monster materials. And the value of monsters is very high, whether it is sold as materials to those extraordinary people, or tamed as mounts. Shawkett suddenly realized that the north is actually much richer than the south imagined. At noon, Shawkett returned to the castle, and Ryan poured him a kind of fruit wine that he had never tasted before. It was not as strong as those strong liquors in the south, but these fruit wines were obviously more suitable for those nobles, especially those ladies, who would probably fall in love with this kind of thing. Mr. Shawkett, when you return to Melendez, I have a trading team that hopes to accompany you. If the tundra territory wants to develop, it must have trade. But as you can see, my territory lacks many things, so I want to communicate with some close nobles. I hope to transport resources from the south to the tundra territory. And I also hope that the specialties of the tundra territory can be sent to the south. There is nothing in the Berean province. Only the underground iron ore is not enough. Shawkett thought about what he had seen and heard in the past 2 days, and he decided not to believe Ryan's words. Chapter 221 Along the way. In the wilderness of mountains, forests and valleys, when you look up, you can see towering peaks and the sky that you can't see in any direction. When you lower your head, you will often be scratched by weeds and dead branches without paying attention. If these more than 300 people were not wearing several layers of animal skin armor, and there were not 100 fully armed knights around them, they would have died on the road long ago. Edward, where do you think their mounts came from? They look taller and more powerful than our pack horses, but shorter than war horses. Next to Edward, a sturdy and thin man couldn't help but look at the mounts under the knights with shining eyes, and couldn't help swallowing hard, wishing he had a mount too. A knight with a mount is a knight. You should call me trade officer. Edward adjusted his clothes and gently wiped off the mud. This was the silk trophy captured by Lord Ryan during the war. The Lord generously gave some of it to Edward. He had to ask around for many days before he found the best craftsman in the frozen territory who had woven a piece of clothing that was more gorgeous than the mud legs. He looked at the war horses under the knights and was also very envious, but he was different from his companions next to him. He had knowledge. Don't ask around about the Lord's ability. Maybe this is a war horse captured in the war. Where are the cat people in Oppia? It's been so many days, why can't I find any of them? Edward was a little annoyed. The Lord ordered him to continue teaching the cat people knowledge on the way, but the cat people were good. Except for suddenly appearing in the evening every day to scare him, he could not see anyone at other times. I don't know about this, it is said that they are very powerful. It's better not to see them, the lackey said. He was also a little frightened by the cat assassins who suddenly appeared and disappeared. That won't do. The great lord said that if I can find those cat people on the road, he will give me a blessing as a reward. Hearing the word blessing, the lackey next to him opened his eyes wide in disbelief and was about to shout subconsciously, but was immediately covered by Edward's mouth. You were selected for the reserve. The lackey stared at Edward, and he felt abandoned. If you have the ability, go find it. I will tell the Lord when the time comes, but don't shout. There is not a complete road in this damn place. The road under our feet is provided by the Andorra Kingdom and Butler Beard. If we provoke a powerful monster, we will all die. Keep your voice down. I don't know how Butler Beard led people into the Andorra Kingdom. Hey, if I have this ability, I should be able to get closer to Master Ryan. Edward sighed, and the lackey next to him kept rolling his eyes and looking at the surrounding environment. I don't believe those cat people don't shit. Remember, if I find them, you can talk to the Lord and bless me too. Almost 1 meter away, Appia sat on a stone and listened to Edward's voice. Although he was sitting on a stone, his whole body had merged with a shadow cast by the tree above his head. His body swayed with the swaying of the tree in the breeze. And around him, 30 cat assassins, like him, were actually always around Edward and the other two. The open ground was always crowded with dozens of people. Appia didn't plan to tell this teacher. He was worried that the other party would not be able to sleep, and then he would not have the energy to teach them knowledge the next day. He looked at his fingers and thought about the information he heard on the way. They would be able to enter the Andorra Kingdom in about 5 days. Someone would pick them up. This team was not only transporting the second batch of weapons for Grand Duke MacReynolds, but also some specialties of the frozen land. Baron Ryan wanted to open a trade route to the Andorra Kingdom, a trade route unknown to the Empire. But there is no road in this wilderness. According to Baron Ryan, when the transport team goes back and forth a few more times and clears the wild beasts or monsters on the road, there will be a road. Appia took a look at the carriages. Each carriage was terribly heavy. Many times, the knights even had to dismount to help in order to move forward smoothly. Sometimes he wondered whether the knights or the pack horses were responsible for pulling the carriages in this team. If there were not some good roads that appeared intermittently for the carriages to move forward smoothly, he would doubt that these pack horses were needed at all. The power of the knights is still very strong, especially the knights in this team. Each of them is a formal knight. These are the most elite 100 people in the frozen land. They have experienced the cruel wars with Baron Ryan. Appia always remembers the warriors who rushed and fought and chopped at the barbarians under the banner of the Rhino Horn Mountain. At that time, they did not have mounts. Thinking of the mounts, Appia wrapped his cloak around himself. He felt a little strange that the mounts of the knights seemed to be able to detect them. These are not ordinary mounts. Appia was shocked at where Ryan had turned these war horses from. When the knights rode on the war horses, their strength was raised to a higher level. The secret of the frozen land was only partially revealed to him. Appia thought so, and then he understood the reason. His loyalty had not been fully recognized. Perhaps, this mission is the key. Appia held a piece of paper in his hand. There were more than a dozen nobles' names on it, but there was no name of the Grand Duke MacReynolds, the destination of their team this time. According to what Edward said these days, it seems that there is a big conflict between Grand Duke MacReynolds and the Andorra royal family. Appia looked at the names of the nobles on the paper. Some of them relied on the Grand Duke, and some of them were still loyal to the royal family. 30 cat assassins are still too few. Maybe we should think of a way, Appia was thinking. He didn't realize that he didn't know how to think before. He just needed to wait for the orders of Earl Weiss, and didn't care about or ask about unnecessary things. 5 days passed, and when the whole team was exhausted, a sharp eagle cry suddenly came from above their heads, but the sound was more powerful than that of a goshawk, like some kind of beast on the ground. Harrington, who was at the front, raised his head, and his sharp eyes under the mask stared at the griffin soaring and circling above his head, and his palm slowly reached for the beast bow behind him. What they did not see inside the Griffin Mountains, they saw when they left the Griffin Mountains. Chapter 222, The Griffin in the Sky, the Duke on Earth. Harrington didn't take out the beast bow in the end, because a head was exposed on the Griffin. After seeing the team below, the Griffin quickly landed and folded its wings with a wingspan of more than 7 meters. The Griffin was still as big as a bison. Such a huge bison is not scary, but it is a lion. It can fight in the sky and is the most powerful eagle. It can also roar on the ground and is not inferior to a lion. This is the griffin. When there are no dragons, the griffin is the best mount for amphibious operations in the sky and on land. And because dragons are usually violent and have bad tempers, the griffin is the perfect mount that knights dream of. No one else. Yes, no one else. If the knight has a dream lover ranking list in his heart, the dragon will be ranked below the griffin. Because of this, Grand Duke MacReynolds is not only the most powerful noble in the Kingdom of Andorra, but also famous in the entire Norris continent. Many knights dream of joining the Grand Duke MacReynolds and becoming his knight attendants, because this way they will have the opportunity to turn a griffin into their own mount. This mountain range is not the only one on the continent that breeds griffins, but it is too difficult to find griffins in other places and turn them into mounts. Are you from the Frozen Land territory? The knight on the griffin looked down at Harrington and others with pride. He saw that the mounts under the cavalry team were substitutes for war horses, and they were a bit small. But can the barons of the Empire have such strength to get so many war horses? I am Fluckthorn. The Grand Duke sent me to guide you on the way, so that you don't go in the wrong direction, when transporting large quantities of arms. Of course, we must be vigilant about any consequences that may be noticed by the Andorra Kingdom. He is the only one here, but there are many Griffin Knights in the vast area around him. Everything is for secrecy. Even Grand Duke MacReynolds cannot bear the consequences of the nobles of the Andorra Kingdom smuggling arms and weapons from the Empire. Harrington Clayton, I'm the deputy commander of the Frozen Land. Are these things traded here? Harrington said, neither servile nor arrogant, and then looked at the other party. Coming alone, Fluckthorn certainly couldn't take away these dozens of vehicles of weapons. Follow me. Knight Fluck didn't say much. The next moment, the griffin took off and flew at a low altitude, guiding them in the direction of advance. After clearing the jungle, Harrington and others were surprised to find that there was such a road in this mountain range. It seems that the Grand Duke has absolute control over this Griffin mountain range. Soon, the team appeared in a camp. This was a military camp in a valley, with 800 soldiers stationed in it. Although they were only wearing rough leather armor, they seemed to be well trained. You hands over to them. Knight Fluck landed from the Griffin. He didn't need to take out any tokens. The commander of the army in the camp had already walked up with a smile. The Griffin was the best token here. Carriages entered the camp one after another. When the linen cloth that blocked the view was pulled open, cold weapons appeared in front of everyone. It was visible to the naked eye that the soldiers in the camp were breathing heavily. Even Knight Fluck put away his pride at this moment and came to a carriage excitedly. The boxes here were opened, and they were all knight swords. He picked up one of them. The sunlight shone down, and the reflected cold light made him extremely excited. Good stuff. He looked at Clayton and said in admiration, your forging technology is really amazing. Just this weapon is of higher quality than the knight sword he used. And there is a carriage here. Count it and stamp it here. Harrington didn't say anything. These things are not scarce in the Frozen Land. The knight sword in his hand can cut off the one in the opponent's hand. He took out a piece of parchment, which wrote the departure time, how many knight swords, how many spears, and how many half-armors were out of the warehouse. At this moment, Harrington used the blood of some wild beast to write down the arrival time, inspected the goods and accepted the quantity, and everything matched. Knight Fluck was stunned. Can it be like this? Obviously, this was the first time he saw this kind of handover. Everything is for safety, isn't it? Harrington laughed. Even within the Empire, there were not many such methods, let alone the Kingdom of Andorra. The gap between the Kingdom and the Empire is not just in military strength and land territory. Frank left his handprint on the parchment. He couldn't write, but this was enough. After putting away the parchment, Harrington also felt relieved. You guys should move the things away quickly. We have to leave quickly. Shunlian asked, where's the nearest noble territory to the Kingdom of Andorra? Continue to the east from here, take the road outside, and you will reach the territory of Viscount Fragoso after leaving the forest, Fluck replied. The quality of the superior weapons made him more enthusiastic about Harrington. If he had a good relationship with him, he might be able to get better weapons and equipment in the future. For a knight, this is a necessity second only to the mount. But he was still a little curious. Aren't you going back? Are you still going to stay in the Andorra Kingdom? He was a little puzzled. This transaction was not to be seen in public. They wished that the people from the Frozen Land would just leave after they came. Didn't you see that this time, He, a Griffin Knight, was in charge of the handover, and no nobles were involved. Those nobles were also afraid that the matter would be leaked. Of course, we came to the Andorra kingdom to buy food. Now we are just lost. If we can't buy food and go back, the Baron will blame us and we will all be punished. Harrington smiled. In Master Ryan's words, this is business. Since it is business, how can you go back empty-handed after coming with a full car? You will be exposed. The last time your people came to the kingdom to buy food, many nobles already knew the news. After all, the Grand Duke is only the Grand Duke, not the king of this land, and many news cannot be blocked. That's perfect, Harrington said. We are here to buy food. If we don't have food when we return, someone in the territory might wonder what we did. You are afraid of being discovered by the royal family and other nobles of the kingdom. Our lord is also worried that the empire will discover this transaction. Which do you think is more terrible, the punishment of the kingdom or the punishment of the empire? Harrington asked, but Knight Fawk could not answer. Although he was not a noble and did not know many things, he knew that the empire would definitely not be willing to subsidize the nobles in the kingdom. Especially not in the name of the empire. Chapter 223, The Test of Military Strength, the result of overwhelming defeat. Finally, Harrington's 100 cavalrymen were stationed in Viscount Fragosso's territory. As an imperial noble army, they could not move forward. The rest was that Edward led his team to purchase food in Fragosso's territory, and then sent some people to purchase from other nobles. The circle of nobles was very small. Although the trade of food was private, it was a considerable income for the nobles in the Andorra kingdom. They certainly could not watch Fragoso eat alone. This was also a way to drag everyone into the water. It would be bad if Fragoso was criticized for colluding with the empire. If it was any other time, Viscount Fragoso would have a big quarrel with those nobles, but recently the atmosphere in the Andorra kingdom was a little tense. As the Viscount of the kingdom, Fragoso did not show up, but Fragosso's eldest son, Digran Fragoso, came forward to receive Knight Harrington from the frozen territory. This eldest son is a knight who practices fervently, but his talent is not very good. He is over 30 years old and still a silver knight. For others, a silver knight in his 30s is also considered a child of destiny, but he is the eldest son of the Viscount, and he has resources that others cannot compare to. Therefore, his talent is not very good. The most talented descendant in the Viscount Fragosso's family is Mihali. When a holy knight in the kingdom passed by here, he said that Miss Mihali had the possibility of becoming a holy knight or even a legend in the future. Just this evaluation made Miss Mihali become a lord in the territory of Viscount Fragoso. The kingdom is not the empire. There are not many legends here, and it is difficult to see them. In such a place, the status brought by strength will be more direct than that of the empire. Mr. Harrington, I have always admired the knight system of the empire. Can you tell me about the legendary knights in the empire? Digran's eyes were fiery. The soldier in front of him was actually a silver knight like him, which made him firmly believe that the knight training of the empire was better than that of the Andorra kingdom. He is the eldest son of the Viscount, but as an heir, he cannot be considered a nobleman. Naturally, it doesn't matter if he gets closer to Harrington. Too many noble heirs will even team up with aliens when adventuring. Sir Digran, how can I know about legends? Harrington smiled bitterly. The only legend he knew was Earl Clayton, but how could he reveal the news of Earl Clayton to others? Not to mention that he was the monarch he once served, and the Baron Ryan he served now was the child of Earl Clayton. There are also legends in the kingdom of Andorra. Your father is a Viscount, so don't you know about it? Harrington was a little curious. Logically speaking, the status of this Viscount heir was much higher than his own, and it shouldn't be difficult to get in touch with legends. Could it be that he was under house arrest? Digran was a little helpless. The legends of the kingdom have not appeared, and the royal family is very afraid of us nobles contacting those legends. If I dare to find a legend, the royal family will be extremely wary of the Fragoso family. How could this be? Harrington said in surprise, but in his mind he remembered what Ryan said to him when he came. In the kingdom of Andorra, there are big problems between the royal family and the nobles, especially with the faction of Grand Duke McReynolds. If you have the chance, you can try to understand it. Harrington didn't know how to describe how Master Ryan was so clear, but now that he found the opportunity, he certainly didn't mind making a contribution. Although Master Ryan handed this matter over to those cat people. Hey, the Andorra royal family is afraid that the power of us nobles will expand. Over the years, as King Andorra has become older and older, he has become more and more stupid. I hope that after His Royal Highness succeeds to the throne, it will be better, if a legend is on good terms with a noble, or even stands on the side of the noble, then that noble is destined to find ways to expand his wealth and power, but for the royal family, this is to weaken their own interests and voice in the kingdom. The problem is that the royal family cannot influence the ideas of the legends. This is a big difference between the empire and the kingdom, or the weak and/or a kingdom. In the empire, let alone the legends standing on the side of a certain noble, even if the noble killed someone in the leadership of a certain noble, they would be tracked down. For the and/or a kingdom, the legend is the sky, and for the empire, the legend will also die. Is the and/or a royal family afraid of the powerful extraordinary and the nobles joining forces? Harrington thought so in his heart, and couldn't help but have a strange expression, because this was a little hard for him to imagine as an imperial man. And Harrington is not a very cunning person, and many things are subconsciously revealed on his face. Oh, right, finally, Digran, who asked the legend in vain, thought of his purpose and interrupted Harrington. The soldiers of the Fragoso family have been a little proud recently. Can you have a sparring match with the soldiers of the Fragoso family? Digran didn't look like a future noble at all. He asked directly, and then took out a bag and put it in Harrington's hand, which contained several pieces of magic beast crystal cores. I hope you can help me teach those guys a lesson. As their legion commander, I am also troubled. Of course, Digran's words were nonsense, and he was not even polite. Because when Harrington came to the military camp with 100 knights in attendance, Viscount Fragoso and several other nobles stood at the window in the castle high in the distance and looked down. Their real purpose was to see what the army of the imperial nobles looked like. The empire was so powerful that it had no enemies except the church and the orcs for so many years, and no other nobles knew what the army of the imperial nobles looked like. Harrington did not refuse, because this was also Ryan's order. Even if Digran had not mentioned it, Harrington would have found an opportunity to test it. Ryan was also very curious about the strength of the nobles of the and/or kingdom. What kind of army could force the and/or royal family to the point where they had to sell out the interests of the kingdom? Charge! In the military camp, on the parade ground, Harrington raised his knight's sword high, and behind him, hundreds of cavalrymen charged forward holding wooden spears for training. The 100 cavalrymen trampled the ground like thousands of troops. Just the indomitable momentum disrupted the formation of the 300 cavalrymen on the opposite side. After a staggered encounter, 70 or 80 cavalrymen were pushed off their horses by the huge force and had to hold themselves to avoid being trampled. On the other side, the 100 knights behind Harrington silently reined in their horses and turned their heads, looking at the battlefield with constant wailing with cold eyes under their visors. In the castle, Viscount Fragoso crushed a crystal cup in his hand at this moment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Baron Huffman. Is this the army of a baron of the empire? In front of the arched window in the castle, Viscount Fragoso let the red wine flow down his arm, while the nobles beside him also looked at the battlefield below in silence. Baron Ryan is not an ordinary baron of the empire. His territory is very powerful, and the population is no less than that of a viscount. Mihaly behind him was also silent about this result, but as the only one present who had been to the Frozen Land territory, she still spoke up. No matter how powerful he is just a baron. According to your opinion, I admit that Ryan has great ability and is an excellent nobleman in the empire that only appears once in 100 years, but he is just a baron, and a baron in the northern border. But my Fragoso has a foundation of hundreds of years. Is it so bad? Taking a deep breath, Fragoso could not accept his own incompetence and the incompetence of his ancestors. Tell Digran that we must win this duel, he almost roared out in suppressed anger. If it was just him, it would be fine, but don't forget that there are other nobles around. They stand on the side of the Fragoso family and the Grand Duke McReynolds. If they lose completely in today's scene, it will shake their trust in Fragoso. Now the situation in the kingdom is tense. He and the Grand Duke must unite a group of nobles around them to achieve great things. Military strength is the only reference value. So, we must win today. As he said, the Viscount glanced at his daughter. In all aspects, Mihaly is more suitable to be his heir than Digran, but it may be meaningless. Mihaly knew what Fragoso meant, turned around and left here, and soon appeared in the military camp below. Fragoso's elite will return to the castle soon. Mr. Harrington, please wait a moment, we will conduct the drill again. Taking this opportunity, Miholy came to Harrington's side. She first praised the strength of the Frozen Earth army, and then tactfully said that there were some nobles in the castle watching, which meant that Fragoso would have the right to speak in the future, which might affect the share of the trade volume with the Frozen Earth. Harrington understood that Miholy wanted him to let go, and the price was that Fragoso would purchase more weapons from the Frozen Earth and sell them more food. But he rejected Miholy without thinking. Sorry, my lady, I am Baron Ryan's attendant, and I have no right to let Baron Ryan's soldiers give up the victory voluntarily. This represents the glory of the Ryan family, and the honor of the knights prevents us from returning to the territory as weak. Harrington's voice was upright. The cavalry behind him was the most elite army in the Frozen Earth. If they lost, it would be a huge blow to the reputation of the Frozen Earth and the prestige of Baron Ryan. Baron Ryan had never failed on the battlefield, so they could not lose to any army, let alone Viscount Fragoso's soldiers. Even if the Grand Duke sent the Griffin Knights, they couldn't be made to bow their heads. After receiving such an answer, Miholy's face was a little ugly, but she still nodded to show that she understood. Not long after, a new group of soldiers appeared in the Viscount's territory, a total of 300 people, but Harrington could see clearly that 200 of them were the same soldiers as before. Charge, holding long weapons for training, the earth trembled, and the iron hooves trampled on the land, stirring up the most primitive smell of the soil. The fully armed armies of both sides once again collided like lions. Finally, blood was seen. Fragoso gave an order, and all the soldiers dared not be careless and stopped hiding. They must win. But in the end, they were the ones who saw blood. In the castle, Viscount Fragoso's eyes were gloomy, and he turned around and stopped watching the outcome of this exercise. The other nobles around him also had inexplicable eyes, and no one knew what they were thinking. The army of the Frozen Territory Baron is so powerful. It seems that we need to contact the Baron. It would be good to deepen our relationship. I heard that there is a caravan from the Frozen Territory buying food. We can communicate with them. At dawn the next day, these nobles took carriages back to their territories. The distance between the territories of the nobles in the Andorra Kingdom is much shorter than that between the nobles in the Empire. It took them only 2 or 3 hours to return to their territories. However, what these nobles did not know was that there were so many people when they went, but when they came back, there were more figures. Appia squatted in the shadow of the corner, looking at Baron Huffman in front of him. The other party was writing a letter in front of the desk. He walked over. This Baron was neither a knight nor a mage, and he could not find that the most powerful cat assassin was right next to him. Your Highness Hernan, I saw something very interesting today. Viscount Fragoso, who is next to Macrinus, invited a caravan from the Empire. It was a Baron's team, with Baron Huffman wrote a bunch of nonsense, and when he gradually came to the key point, he heard a knock on the door. He looked at the door vigilantly, and then put the letter in his hand under the table. Come in. The one who came in was Knight Roslet, the most powerful knight in the Baron's territory. The Baron looked at the power in the territory and asked with some dissatisfaction, "What's the matter, Knight Roslet?" The knight knew that the Baron was upset about someone disturbing him in his study, but still said, "Mr. Baron, Miss Bobby guessed that a thief had entered the territory. I wonder if you have found anything, someone." Huffman had a guilty conscience, and naturally couldn't help wondering if he had exposed something. Take people to search the territory and arrest all the strangers. He was very cautious. Follow your will. Oh, by the way, are the people from the Frozen Territory coming to us? Yes, they arrived yesterday afternoon. They are purchasing food from the territory. Don't worry about them. Find a way to contact them and say, Baron Huffman instructed. After the knight left, Baron Huffman continued to write. Finally, Appia watched him open a secret compartment behind a bookcase and put the letter in it. Covered with magic secret patterns, Appia did not dare to make a move after Baron Huffman left. He was not familiar with magic methods, and it would be bad if he aroused vigilance. But from the few words he had seen before, he had been able to understand something. Your Highness Hernan, this should be about a prince of the kingdom, right? Chapter 225 The Grand Duke's Study. At the same time, further south of Viscount Fragoso's territory, in the southwestern border of the Kingdom of Andorra, there is the most powerful noble in the kingdom, Grand Duke MacReynolds, and it also borders the earldoms and dukedoms outside the kingdom. The kingdom of Andor betrayed the interests of the kingdom, which involved the nobles of this area. Grand Duke McReynolds, with a head full of silver hair, had a legendary life, which also destined him to become a noble legend in his lifetime, but not a knight, but a legendary wizard. He has a legendary title, Wind Emperor. He is the most powerful legendary wind magic wizard in the world. This is why the King of Andorra is most afraid of Grand Duke McReynolds, and when he betrayed the interests of the kingdom, he also targeted this place. At this moment, the Grand Duke had a deep look in his eyes, standing on the towering mountains, looking at the vast world in the distance. Edo is old, the Grand Duke said softly, but at this moment, no one who is qualified to listen to him dared to respond. Erdo Andorra, the current old king of the Kingdom of Andorra. He used to be so high-spirited. He even told me that he wanted to learn from the Empire, and he wanted to use his sincerity to attract many legends, and also let many legends be born in the kingdom. He told me that he wanted to fight against the church, and he wanted to place the belief of the gods in the world on his crown, like the Columbus of the Empire. He told me that he would become the greatest king of Andorra, and the kingdom would become stronger and stronger under his leadership. We would witness the glory of the kingdom together and become the second empire on the land of Norris. At that time, he was so ambitious and ambitious. When he was young, he really did a lot to make the kingdom's military strength and economy recover, but he was too weak, which also led to his short life, so he grew old. When he got old, he forgot what he had said. He began to sell out the land of the kingdom, trample on the kingdom of Andorra, and trample on the dignity of Andorra's glory. He also betrayed the nobles who were loyal to him. He was a king, but he was no longer qualified to lead this kingdom to continue. Now, he has not only betrayed the nobles who were loyal to him, he has also betrayed the entire kingdom. Grand Duke McReynolds exhaled heavily and said slowly, he actually colluded with the church and stationed a supernatural army of the church in the kingdom. He is old and confused. McReynolds turned around and looked at the four nobles in the study. Do you think he did the right thing? No one answered, but under the gaze of a Grand Duke, someone still couldn't stand the pressure. It was an Earl, the blazing Earl of the Andorra Kingdom, Earl Wilcox. He lowered his head and said softly, the kingdom and the empire are not the same after all. We have never said that we reject the preaching of the church. We even have churches, pastors, and priests in our territory. The relationship between the church and the kingdom has not yet broken down. The appearance of the Feather Dragon army here may be aimed at the empire. He didn't believe what he said. Grand Duke McReynolds looked at Earl Wilcox and laughed. The church has no qualifications and strength to launch an attack from the north of the empire. They can only instigate the orcs in the north. If the Yulong Legion dares to appear on the battlefield in the north of the empire, can even one person walk out alive? Do you believe this? But the king is the king after all. Grand Duke, another earl next to him gritted his teeth and spoke. He really didn't want to say it. Grand Duke, you also said that the king is old after all. Maybe when the next King Andorra appears, the kingdom will change? No. McReynolds shook his head. The guys in the Andorra royal family are all a bunch of good-for-nothings. They can't inherit this huge country at all. They are not even 1/10 of Edo. In their hands, the Andorra kingdom will only be corrupted by the church and become a knife for the church to deal with the empire. No one dared to respond, because McReynolds used the word they. In other words, the Grand Duke was not optimistic about the prince who was supposed to inherit the kingdom. The right to inherit the kingdom was likely to be disputed. They dared not think further, because these words came from the mouth of Grand Duke McReynolds. To a large extent, he could influence the birth of the next king of Andorra. Just like decades ago, the current king was able to sit firmly in that position because of the support of the McReynolds family, although his right of succession was beyond doubt. Now, I need your answer. McReynolds looked at these nobles. I don't want to see the church continue to corrupt our country. If I can, I will expel them. These words made the faces of several earls look shocked, and they drooled at Grand Duke McReynolds. Grand Duke, have you communicated with the Empire? I heard. No. McReynolds interrupted him directly, feeling a little headache. Can't the news in the territory be blocked? I haven't contacted the Empire yet. I don't want the church to corrupt our country, and I don't want the Empire to have the opportunity to control our rights, so, this matter can only rely on ourselves. The earls looked at each other. They didn't believe it. Without the support of the Empire, which noble in the world dared to challenge the church? The war between the church and the Empire is stalemate in the Thousand Lakes province, which is on the west coast. It's far away from us. The church can't control us. As long as we succeed, All rights will belong to us, the kingship and the divine power are crowned at the same time. Any nobleman who hears this will be excited. This is comparable to the glory and honor of their ancestors. Otherwise, the empire would not have been against the church for so many years. But they still have concerns. Grand Duke, I can't make a decision, they are Earl nobles. While they respect Grand Duke McReynolds, they are not so afraid. Our territory, our honor, we have been loyal to the Andorra royal family for generations. Let us betray, even after death we have no face to face our ancestors. Grand Duke McReynolds stared at these earls. If he could, he would have murdered them, but he couldn't kill them. Grand Duke, we can't make a decision either. Several other earls also spoke up. They couldn't completely stand on the side of Grand Duke McReynolds, although he was very powerful, and although these nobles had been pretending to obey the Andorra royal family in recent years. Betrayal is always the last choice of the nobles. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.